Chapter 552. Sister, I'll have to trouble you to take care of me at home from now on. The female centurion helped her sister pack her luggage. The order to expel her from the military had already been issued, so her sister naturally had to pack her things and leave the women's battalion. Rest well at home, don't be afraid of spending money. My salary will be sent home in the future. You'll be in charge of it. If I let Mother hold it, I'm sure she'll be cheated away by those black-hearted people. Okay, I got it. From time to time, the older female soldier would raise her head to look at the younger sister, her eyes filled with regret. She didn't know what happened to her during that period of time. Her father and relatives bombarded her one after another, telling her that getting married was more reliable than being a soldier. If she got married, she could be the head of the family and become the wife of the head of the family. If she could get a boy, he might inherit the family business in the future, and there would be hope for the rest of her life. He gave her all kinds of examples, telling her that the Lord's promise was definitely a bluff. She was so muddle-headed that the scales in her heart were tilted towards her family. Now, she had been stripped of her military status. When she returned home, wouldn't she be tormented by her family? Thinking of this, she couldn't help but think of her younger sister. She was obedient and sensible, and much more reliable than her elder sister. In this era, if his 15-year-old sister hadn't entered the women's camp, she would probably have given birth to a baby and become a mother by now. I've seen through it. To put it bluntly, Mother is also unclear. I gave her half a year's salary, hoping that she could rely on the money to be a little tougher at home, so that she wouldn't be bullied by Grandma, bullied by Auntie, and beaten by Father. The more she spoke, the angrier she became. The younger female soldier could not help but grit her teeth. The barracks provided meals 3 times a day, and the food was very good. The rice and silver that were distributed every month had nowhere to use, so the sisters decided to secretly give them to their mother. It was just that they didn't expect this mother to trick them like this, attracting a group of blood-sucking leeches. Once those black-hearted relatives made a fuss, her sister would lose her military status, which was equivalent to losing a layer of protection. What would she do in the future? The marriage was ruined, the husband's family fled faster than a rabbit, and the family was beaten up because of this matter. They would definitely blame it on her sister. Thinking of this, the female soldier felt her head swell. Her younger sister continued, "Sis, don't be silly this time. If they make a scene at you, just hit them back. I'm still a centurion, who dares to hit my sister? It's the same for Mother. You have to be more strong-willed so that you and Mother won't be bullied." Compared to the weak elder sister, the younger sister's personality was much tougher. Her younger sister nagged that the women's battalion only had 1 day off every month, and she could only go home once a month. The female soldier sister still did not say a word. She silently took the luggage that the girl handed over. Apart from a few sets of clothes and 2 sets of bedding, there was basically nothing else. When he exited the tent, he was surrounded by a dozen or so comrades whom he was on good terms with. Everyone was silent. The female soldier's lips quivered. "I'm leaving." Many of his comrades came to see him off, but there were also some female soldiers who were not familiar with him who came to watch the fun. After all, she was the first person to be stripped of her military status and banished from the female battalion since its establishment. The female soldier's sister almost ran away in a panic. Even though no one said anything, she felt uncomfortable all over. It was as if there were countless pairs of half-smiling eyes looking at her, laughing at her for being weak and useless, laughing at her for abandoning a bright future, and willing to be tortured by her family. The female soldier's younger sister saw those amused gazes and could not help but feel angry. She said shrewdly, "What are you looking at? If it wasn't for my sister, would your household register have been moved out so early?" A female soldier laughed and said, "Even if it wasn't for your sister, there might be someone else's sister." Everyone knows what happened in the women's battalion recently. However, your parents couldn't help it, and your sister's brain is also empty. In my opinion, it's good that your sister left the women's battalion early. She doesn't care, and there are plenty of people who want to get in. If it wasn't for her suspecting the Lord, would this have happened? She didn't care, but there were plenty of people who did. If this matter was investigated carefully, it was clearly the female soldier's sister who was disloyal and distrustful of the Lord. What was the use of such a person in the women's battalion? The female soldier's younger sister was speechless. Forget it. Didn't Commandant Jiang always say that people who want to save themselves can be saved, but those who resign themselves to adversity are definitely hopeless? Your sister's skills are considered one of the best among the female soldiers. If your family members hit her, do you think she will fight back? You should be more careful. If you have time to bicker here, why don't you go and beat up your parents? Lest your sister's corpse turns cold the next time you go back on your break. No matter how good her skills were, she would still be beaten to death if she didn't resist. These words were somewhat vicious, but they were not without reason. The female soldier's face turned green and then red. This matter was only lively for 2 days, and the female soldier's attention was attracted by another major event. The female soldiers who had performed meritorious deeds in the previous few battles were the first to receive their own independent household register, and they were the owners of the household. Although all the female soldiers could receive their own independent household register, there were differences in the timing. The first batch of female soldiers had performed meritorious deeds. Imperceptibly, this increased the desire of the female soldiers to achieve meritorious deeds. This policy also dissatisfied many of the female soldiers' families, and they opposed it. The owners of the household were the people who were in charge of the household. If these losers ran away one by one, how could they control them in the future? However, under Jiang Pingji's strong suppression, the voices of resistance quickly disappeared without a trace. Fengyi County was a rare refuge. If the district magistrate hated them and they were chased out, how could the family survive? Even though they were unwilling, this policy was still implemented smoothly. It was just that the household register management department was pitiful. There weren't many female soldiers, but they weren't few either. Thousands of people had been separated from their original household registration. It wasn't as simple as just moving their household registration. There were also issues of property and inheritance involved. Everyone was busy from day to night. It was still summer, but they were already half dead. While Jiang Pingji took care of the female battalion, she did not forget about the male battalion. Welfare policies were promulgated one after another, which greatly reduced their worries during the war. As a result, the male soldiers did not care about envying the female battalion. Each of them was grinning from year to year. Even though they were training under the hot summer sun, they were still full of energy. They could hear the roaring slogans in the military camp from afar. After the incident with the female battalion, Jiang Pingji realized that most of the soldiers' thoughts had been fixed. The efficiency of subtle influence was too slow, and it was difficult to have an effect in a short period of time. Since that was the case, it was better to choose simple and violent brainwashing methods. Whether it was morning training or evening training, everyone had to shout the rules of the military camp and use them as slogans during training. It was the same for both the male and female battalions. 1 or 2 days was nothing. She did not believe that these people would not be affected day after day. Jin Tian Khan, streamer, you are getting closer to our party. You have a bright future. I have high hopes for you. Hey Pinga, streamer, do you want to consider setting up a political commissar in the military camp? Given that the ancient and modern military systems are different, the political commissar you set up doesn't have to manage too much. Usually, he will tell the soldiers simple war stories and instill ideas that you think are useful. Occasionally, he will manage internal affairs. He will be like a good wife who is a housekeeper. He will teach illiterate soldiers how to read and eliminate illiteracy. Chapter 553. Using the words of the audience in the streaming room to mock themselves, they were just a group of salted fish whose main job was to shout 666. Their secondary job was to watch the drama unfold. However, watching the drama unfold was one thing. Salted fish also had brains. Their suggestions would also inspire Jiang Pingji. For example, she had considered the position of political commissar carefully. She was quite tempted, but when combined with reality, she wilted and could not carry it out. Shanghai Tianyuan potato chips, why? Isn't this a good suggestion? I think it's very feasible. Salami Jishui, don't be anxious. The streamer only said it's not feasible now. She didn't say it's not feasible in the future. It's probably because the conditions are not ripe yet. Do you think a housekeeper can be a political commissar? The most basic requirement is that a political commissar is not illiterate. After the bullet screen was posted, many of the anxious salted fishes calmed down. Yes, they forgot that 99 out of 100 people in the streamer's world were illiterate. The position of political commissar was not to be knowledgeable, but he must not be illiterate. Otherwise, how could he brainwash people? How could he eliminate illiteracy? To put it bluntly, Jiang Pingji was still short of manpower. How could she not be short of manpower? First, recruit talents and use various benefits to attract refugees to settle down. Recruit soldiers and buy horses to strengthen their strength. Jiang Pingji was already working hard on this point. Wei Xiai had also sent more than 10 letters to students he was close to, but he had not received any replies yet. Second, nurture talents herself. Speaking of nurturing talents, one had to mention the academy. The academy was the cradle of talents. Jiang Pingji previously tricked Sheng Wanwan to be her teacher. She ordered people to build a small academy in Xiangyang district, where the military was the strongest. She planned to recruit 100 clever students. At present, the construction of the academy had reached its end. The enrollment plan could also be put on the agenda. As long as she trained them for a year or two, she could quickly recruit a batch of low-level talents. Not to mention anything else, at least they could be a political commissar and brainwash the soldiers by telling them stories. Third, birth. 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 Encourage women of suitable age to have children. After all, new lives were the future. Too many people died in war, which would cause a sharp decline in the population. If there was not an appropriate number of newborns, the population would show a negative growth, which would be detrimental to long-term development. Speaking of the third point, Jiang Pingji could not help but scratch the wall. Why was the fertility conditions here so backward? I really don't want to issue this law. I feel like it goes against my own principles, but I have no choice but to do it. Sigh. Jiang Pingji finished scratching the wall and complained to the audience with a serious face. The audience in the streaming room had been with her for a few years. Through the bits and pieces of information she occasionally revealed, they knew why Jiang Pingji said that. In the host's world, the birth of new life depended on the hard work of scientists. Men and women donated their sperm and eggs and went home to wait to hold their children. Even so, men and women still found it troublesome to have children, and the population grew at a negative rate. It was only thanks to the clever government that they started the population breeding program that they managed to stabilize the human population, which had been declining for a while. You said that the womb nurtures and naturally reproduces new life. Dear, a few years in prison is waiting for you. Starting from 10 years, up to a lifetime. Now, for a big shot of the Federation to issue a law to encourage women of suitable age to have children, in her opinion, this crime was enough to warrant a death sentence. Complaining was one thing, but it still had to be done. There was a great drought in the north that year, and the crops in the fields had almost withered. The Tsing-Yi army and the Red Lotus group, who were fighting so hard that they could barely hold on. Now that they could no longer resist, the situation in the north had stabilized a little. At least before the spring plowing next year, there would be no large-scale conflicts in the north. This was a good opportunity to cultivate and recuperate. Jiang Pingji intended to seize this opportunity to let the people under her rule cultivate and recuperate, such as giving birth to a baby. However, even though it was a policy to encourage the population, Jiang Pingji also added some personal items. The best age for women to give birth was between 25 and 30 years old. The body was basically mature, the bones were completely calcified, and the pelvis was further widened. This was the most suitable state for giving birth. This was also one of the reasons why Jiang Pingji set the retirement age for female soldiers at 24 years old. If the population was to be encouraged, she decided to give appropriate encouragement and benefits to pregnant women at this age. Of course, in view of the high probability of abandoning baby girls in this era, if birth was encouraged, it was unknown how many baby girls would be abandoned or murdered as soon as they were born. For this reason, she also added another rule. If the families did not want to raise the baby girls that were born, they could send the baby girls to the nursery. They could not abandon or deliberately murder them. Families who were willing to raise the baby girls would be given some convenience. However, although she had a good idea, many people, including the strategists under her, were a little puzzled. Most of the people got married between 13 and 18 years old. It would be a big problem if they got married later. Therefore, their childbirth was also concentrated at this age. Why did the Lord reward pregnant women between 25 and 30 years old? According to the current trend, pregnant women in their 30s could basically have children with their daughters-in-law. Faced with this doubt, Jiang Pingji blinked and said, "You're uncultured. Read more." Feng Jin, who was reprimanded as uncultured, readily asked, "Which book should I read?" "Medical books, of course." Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "I read a variety of books. I've read all kinds of medical books. Medical books also say that it's not good for a woman's health if she gives birth too early. Haven't you noticed that for those young couples who have 7 or 8 children, basically only the children born later can survive? The children born earlier are either weak and sickly or died early due to other reasons." Feng Jin was slightly surprised. Was there really such a thing? Of course there was. Many doctors were also aware of it, but they could not say it. Whoever said it would be scolded. Which family did not hope for their wife to quickly bear children for the family? The Feng family had strict upbringing. Whether it was a man or a woman marrying a wife, the age of marriage was 17 or 18 years old. Some were even 2 years later. The situation was much better than those who got married and had children at the age of 13 or 14. Therefore, Feng Jin really did not have many feelings about this. However, if he carefully understood the people at the bottom of the social ladder, he would know the truth of Jiang Pingji's words. Jiang Pingji said again, "I'm not saying that children in their teens are not allowed to have children. I'm just more encouraging older people to have more children. Instead of giving birth at the age of 13 or 14 and having 7 or 8 children in their 20s, only 2 or 3 children survived in the end, it was better to wait a little longer. When the body was slightly developed, the survival rate of the children would be higher." Medical technology in this era was very backward. It was very risky for women to give birth at an inappropriate age. The risk was even greater. Jiang Pingji's current strength was still too weak. She would not go against the trend of the entire society, but she could adapt to the situation. Not only could she achieve her goal, but it was also in line with the current trend. She worked hard to find a balance between the two and slowly change the world. Feng Jin's mind was a little messy. After a while, he said helplessly, "If that's the case, it's best for my lord to collude with a few doctors and tell them the reason. Otherwise, if this law of yours is passed down, I don't know how many people will scold you." Why did he scold Jiang Pingji secretly? Chapter 554. Doctor, will my daughter-in-law's child be all right? Ever since Jiang Pingji issued the new laws, the people were puzzled and overjoyed at the same time. They were puzzled. They could not understand why their lord wanted an old woman between 25 and 30 years old to give birth to a child. The child would be the same age as her grandchildren. Wouldn't she feel ashamed? However, the doctor in charge had said that the lord's words were not wrong. The people followed blindly and were more easily influenced by public opinion. In terms of fertility treatment, who had more power than the doctor? The doctor said that pregnant women who gave birth to children at a young age would have a weak body and the pregnant woman would not be in good health. The people began to recall. They all married and had children very early. Which family's daughter-in-law did not get pregnant several times and give birth to 7 or 8 children? What was the result? How many children were raised? Putting aside human factors and starvation, if one were to consider the possibility of dying prematurely due to a weak body, it would be extremely terrifying. There were no effective contraceptives in this era. Once you were pregnant, you had to give birth, no matter how long it was between the two births. Thinking in this direction, the people shuddered. Which family's daughter-in-law did not give birth when they were in their teens? If they did not die from dystocia, the children would jump out one after another. 7 or 8 children would be born, and in the end, only 2 or 3 would survive. If they encountered other disasters, it was estimated that only 1 child would be left. Some would not even have a child. They found that the children born later in life were indeed stronger. At that time, they thought that it was because their lives were better. Those whose daughter-in-law was pregnant could not sit still. Pregnant women lined up in front of the clinic. The doctor could meet hundreds of mothers-in-law like the one in front of him who was worried about their unborn grandchildren. He secretly sighed in his heart. The doctor felt that he was unlucky today. Why was it his turn to be on duty? Your daughter-in-law is strong. If she takes good care of her pregnancy and relaxes her mind, she will definitely give birth to a healthy child. The woman said, "But my daughter-in-law is only 16 years old this year." The doctor curled his lips in his heart. Even if she was only 13 years old, could she abort the child, not to mention 16 years old? Which medical student did not know that giving birth too early was easy for the child to be born with congenital deficiencies? However, he could not say this. Marrying a wife was to carry on the family line. Why would these mothers-in-law, who only had grandchildren in their eyes, care about this? Anyway, she was someone else's daughter. It was wrong that she couldn't give birth to a son, and it was also wrong that she couldn't raise a son. Everyone was in the wrong, except for being a mother-in-law. The doctor was frustrated, but he replied gently, "Childbirth is also divided into innate and acquired. Even if there were some innate deficiencies, with proper care, it could be made up for, but it would take more effort. Looking at your daughter-in-law's complexion, I saw that she seemed to be in a difficult position. Looking at her pulse, it was obscure and heavy. This was a knot in her heart. Old madam, don't worry too much. Don't give her too much pressure. Pregnant women need to feel good physically and mentally, be healthy, and be in a good mood. This way, they can give birth to better children. Don't you think so?" The doctor in charge had been instructed that they had to insist on giving birth early. Although it was easy for a child to die young, they could not say that it was too late. Although the child born early was congenitally deficient, it could still be healthy and lively after careful care. It was just that the adult had to take good care of the child and could not be careless. Jiangpingji's medical center was an institution that attracted a lot of fans. The medical herbs and the doctor's salary were specially subsidized by the government office. In this way, the people's expenditure for medical treatment was less. The doctor could focus more on treating the patients and did not need to consider other chores. Anyone who had a headache or fever could come to see a doctor. It did not cost much and the medicine was not expensive. In order to take care of the female patients, there were also female medical soldiers who took turns to learn medicine in the medical center. For almost a year, the medical center in Xiangyang district had a good impression of the people. Since the doctor in charge said so, the people thought for a while in a daze. They could accept the laws that Jiangpingji had issued. Pregnant women in their 20s were a little old, but it was easy for them to give birth and the children they gave birth to were healthy. This was an advantage. Fengyi County ushered in a small baby boom. It diluted the gloomy atmosphere to some extent and brought some joy. This year, there was a great drought in the north. Not to mention that there was no harvest in the fields, the scorching sun hung high in the sky and there was a lack of water everywhere. Without food, the most they could do was starve. When they were extremely hungry, they could eat mud, bark, tree roots, and grass. However, without water, they could not survive for 3 to 4 days. The Tsingyi army was the first to be defeated because they only knew how to destroy and not produce and manage. In order to survive, there were more and more deserters. The increasing number of deserters meant that there were more and more mobs and refugees. In comparison, the situation of the Red Lotus group was still considered good. They fought with their faith and governed the people with their faith. There was a drought in the entire northern territory. They even led the people to pray to the gods. Although it was useless, it eased the panic of the people to a certain extent. Under such circumstances, the construction of Fengyi County was already on the right track. The originally dilapidated Maolin district, Qingan district, and Jiaoping district all showed signs of vitality. Some refugees who escaped back thought that they had come to the wrong place. Was this still their old hometown? Every day, refugees fled into Fengyi County. Outside the city, people could be seen waiting for inspection and resettlement. Although they were still very poor, as long as there were enough people, there was no need to fear that they could not develop. The weather is hot now. The water level of the wells has been dropping. There are also traces of the mountain streams drying up. Yang Xi's face, which could be compared to the full moon, had become so thin that a sharp chin could be seen. His black stubble had not been trimmed in time. He looked very pathetic. The canals are covered with green bricks, but the water has been decreasing. I think the other 3 districts are in the same situation. What should we do? The boy's servant no longer learned cooking from the chef. He was pulled over by his master to tidy up documents and was ordered around as half a labor force. He said, "Why don't we restrict the people's daily water use?" Wei Ci shook his head. "No. If we do this, it will easily cause panic among the people. Every household will rush to store water. That will be bad." New refugees gathered every day. If the news of water shortage in the city was spread at this time, who knew how chaotic it would be? The boy's servant had a bitter expression. "What should we do?" Wei Ci thought about it. "Why don't we change the method?" It was the same as controlling the use of water, but the method of publicity was different. The effect caused was also very different. Yang Xi said in surprise, "Change the method." Wei Ci said, "Now there are so many refugees outside the city. There is a large area of drought in the north. Many people don't have access to water. In serious cases, they will die of thirst. In that case, we will inform the people inside and outside the city about the serious situation in the north. Tell them that although there is no shortage of water in the county, every household should cherish the current situation, save water, and reduce unnecessary waste of water. Thinking about how other people did not have access to water, if the people of each household wasted water, wouldn't their conscience hurt? The boy's servant and Wei Si had the same purpose. It was obvious that the former would cause panic and chaos, while the latter could make the people feel guilty and save water spontaneously. It could even increase the people's gratitude toward Jiang Pingji. Without her, would everything happen today? Chapter 555. Facts proved that Wei Si's method was indeed effective. Not only did it not cause panic among the people, but it even made them more united. However, this method ultimately treated the symptoms but not the root cause. Every day that God did not give them face and rain, the drought would become more serious. Compared to the scene of thousands of miles of dry fields outside, the situation in Fengyi County was much better. Jiang Pingji's brain and spirit had returned to their peak state. It was not difficult for her to explore the underground water flow. Even without this, based on her previous experience, she could easily find a place to dig a well. With such a strong backer, the water shortage was not serious. Jiang Pingji held a honey popsicle in her mouth and said vaguely, "It's so hot." The boiled water was mixed with a thick layer of honey. After stirring, it was placed into a special groove mold. Finally, it was placed into the fridge and made into an edible popsicle. The pure natural honey tasted quite sweet, and it made one's entire body feel comfortable, dispelling the heat in one's body. As for the fridge, of course, it was not the fridge that the audience in the streaming room was familiar with. It was also not the one that Jiang Pingji bought from the mall. That shabby and rubbish mall did not even sell a bathtub, let alone high-end furniture like a fridge. Even if there was, where could they find a generator? The fridge that Jiang Pingji mentioned was actually the ice-making box that she and Jiang Ping had created. It was called fridge for short. In ancient times, ice was mostly made from snow and ice in winter. Then, it was stored in an ice cellar and enjoyed in the next summer. Jiang Pingji knew how to make ice, but she did not know the name of the ice-making material in this era. After pondering with Jiang Ping and Jiang Ping for a long time, she finally found a material that could be used to make ice. The audience in the streaming room said that it was called saltpeter, a good material for making ice in ancient times. Adhering to the principle that good things should be enjoyed by her subordinates, Jiang Pingji had enough honey popsicles. She asked someone to send the fridge that she made to the other 3 counties to reward her subordinates who had worked hard. They worked overtime in the summer and ate some popsicles to cool down. "My lord, water came out from 3 wells yesterday. As long as we get through this month, the weather should gradually turn cold." Jiang Ping was a technical geek. The person he admired the most in his life was his lord. Her ability to find wells was better than any experienced farmer. Wherever she said a well would produce water, there would definitely be water. If it wasn't so, how could the people live so comfortably? More or less. I hope the heavens will give me some face and rain more before the autumn harvest. That way, I won't be considered to have no harvest this year. Last year, Xiangyang district reclaimed a lot of wastelands. The wastelands were rented to the people in the county town for farming. Even though there was a shortage of water this summer, the people saved water to take care of the fields. For the past few months, it was unknown how much effort they had put in to take care of the crops in the fields. If something went wrong during this period, causing a year's worth of hard work to go down the drain, it was unknown how much the farmers would cry. The 2 of them sat under the porch and leisurely nibbled on popsicles. There were 2 halves of watermelon beside them. After nibbling on the popsicles, they used a spoon to dig into the watermelon. When Feng Jin rushed over, drenched in sweat, this was the scene he saw. His lord was dressed in gray and brown. Her legs were crossed inelegantly. Her trousers were rolled up to her thighs and her sleeves were rolled up to her shoulders. Her long, jet green hair was combed into a ponytail. 2 strands of bangs hung on both sides of her cheeks. She held half a large watermelon in her arms and held a spoon in her right hand as she ate and drank. Zhang Ping's image was not much better. Feng Jin's face instantly darkened. Seeing his expression, the live stream room took the initiative to add psychological words. F***ck. These 2 beasts. Jiang Pingji found it funny. Feng Jin was born in an aristocratic family. His upbringing was very good. He would not curse at the slightest provocation. Feng Jin stepped forward and carefully avoided the watermelon skin that was scattered all over the ground. My lord, what's the matter, why you? Jiang Pingji raised her head. There was still a piece of watermelon seed at the corner of her mouth. She looked very innocent. Zhang Ping, on the other hand, knew how to maintain his image. He covered his mouth with his big sleeves and quietly wiped his mouth. He sat upright, but his stomach was a little full. He felt a little bloated when he stood up. Feng Jin took a deep breath and told himself to be patient. He did not want to lose his temper with such an unreliable lord. He said, I just received news that something big happened in the south. The second prince's wife, Anyina, died suddenly. The cause of death is unknown. Jiang Pingji's brain worked for a moment. She remembered who Anyina was. She shuddered and asked with a serious expression, Anyina is dead. Who was Anyina? Some of the viewers who were following the updates intermittently did not know, but the veteran viewers who had a stronger sense of crisis remembered. Waitu Lei Jinyu, Anyina. Isn't she the princess of the royal family of the northern borderline who later married the second prince of Dongqing? Fangding Zaiyu, she's dead. Why is Feng Jin so nervous? If she's dead, then so be it. Xinjia, please, can you have some political awareness? Although Anyina was only the princess of the northern borderline, she was also the link between the northern borderline and Dongqing. The northern borderline had been ambitious for a long time. Anyina was a spy sent by the northern borderline who specialized in stirring up trouble. Now that she's dead, the 3 tribes of the northern borderline will have enough reasons to send troops to Dongqing. Look at Dongqing's current state. Can they resist the cavalry of the northern borderline? Although they had never seen the power of the cavalry of the northern borderline, the cavalry's charging ability and lethality had always been very strong in the ancient battlefield. If the cavalry did not encounter a unit that completely restrained them, they could be said to be invincible on the battlefield. The cavalry was very mobile. They would leave after one wave of attacks. How could the ordinary 2-legged infantry catch up? Not only that, the battles on the ancient battlefield relied a lot on the cooperation of the army. The cavalry's charge could collide with the formation and cut the enemy's formation into several pieces, so that the army could not take care of the end of the battle. The enemy's combat power could not be maximized and could only be cut and eaten away. According to their understanding, the terrain of Dongqing was relatively flat, which was very suitable for cavalry operations. Once the northern borderline sent troops and broke through the border defense line, the hinterland of Dongqing would be at their mercy. What was worse was that the north of Dongqing was in a mess. The drought and military disasters did not stop, and the south was in full swing. At this time, if the northern borderline launched a sneak attack under the banner of righteousness, Dongqing would really be unable to say anything. They could only swallow their suffocation. The big boss in the live stream explained to the newbie. It was not important whether Anyina was dead or not. What was important was that if she was dead, the northern borderline would have a justifiable excuse to send troops. Jiang Pingji's expression was solemn. If the northern borderline sent troops, her Fengyi County would not be able to stay out of it. Feng Jin asked, "My lord, what should we do now?" The internal and external troubles were really giving her a headache. Jiang Pingji said, "Originally, I wanted to slow down and build while nibbling away at the people to give them time to recuperate. Now it seems that time doesn't wait for me. If we don't speed up, when the cavalry of the northern borderline arrives, I'm afraid it will be difficult to resist." She wanted to wait for Fengyi County to recover before sending troops. She wanted to strive to recover the entire Wanzhou after the spring plowing next year, but it seemed that it was impossible now. Chapter 556. The people did not know about Enyina's death. Even if they knew, it was just the death of a member of the royal family. However, the news was enough to stir up the situation in the north if it fell into the ears of sensitive people. Jiang Pingji's face darkened. She inquired about the recruitment of soldiers and the training of the new recruits. Due to the drought in the north, many members of the Tsingyi army or the Red Lotus group felt that they could not live on. They left the organization and became refugees. Fengyi County was an oasis in the desert for these refugees. They tried their best to get close to it. Jiang Pingji asked people to screen them carefully and select those with better qualities to enter the new recruit camp. Thanks to the household registration policy of the female camp, the recruitment was quite smooth. Many women who were forced by life also wanted to enter. However, Jiang Pingji raised the threshold of the female camp. She only selected women who were physically strong, agile, and determined to ensure the combat power of the female camp. In this era, the population could only be multiplied by women giving birth. However, the female camp stipulated that women could only get married and give birth after retiring from the army at the age of 24. If too many women entered the female camp, the population of the territory under her rule would inevitably be affected. This was what Jiang Pingji did not want to see. Apart from that, winning a war did not depend on who had more people. The overall quality was also very important. She would rather the number of people in the female camp be half that of the male camp, but the combat level must not decline. Quality was more important than quantity. Jiang Pingji asked with a serious expression, "How's the mining of the iron ore?" Feng Jin said, "The Tsingyi army soldiers who were captured have been sent to mine. The iron ore vein is considered rich, but in terms of smelting, it's beyond our capabilities. I'm afraid we have to carefully look for skilled craftsmen. This is not difficult. I can think of a way to solve it." The territory had iron ore, which meant that they did not need to buy it outside at a high price. They could save a lot of money. Last year, they bought thousands of sets of simple infantry equipment. It made Jiang Pingji's heart ache. They spent money like water. Even if the money was contributed by the prodigal women of the north borderline, it was her money once it entered her warehouse. Feng Jin said again, "But I'm afraid it's difficult to deal with the cavalry of the north borderline. To deal with the north borderline, they had to face their cavalry. According to previous understanding, the army of the three tribes of the north borderline was generally composed of infantry and cavalry. The ratio of the two was about 1:2. More than 10 years ago, the three tribes of the north borderline sent troops to attack Chongzhou's Shangyu County. They used 100,000 troops, including 60,000 to 70,000 cavalry. After the battle, the enemy was unstoppable, taking down 6 cities in a row. If not for the quick response of the residents of Zhenbei Marquis, the entire Chongzhou would have been conquered by them if they had been delayed for more than 10 days. The three tribes of the north borderline were nomadic people. They dealt with horses all year round. To put it bluntly, children of 7 or 8 years old could ride a horse and gallop on the plains of the north borderline. If the nobles of Dongqing did not have the help of stirrups, they could not even climb up the back of a horse. Stirrups had just appeared in this era, but they were not widely used. Only a few aristocrats would equip their horses with simple stirrups. It was not easy to ride a horse these days, but many people who were skilled in horsemanship did not like to use stirrups. Take Li Yun for example, he often rode a horse without stirrups. That was why he was teased by the audience in the live streaming room, praising his unparalleled waist strength and saying dirty things like how his wife would be blessed in the future. The stirrups could be further improved to assist the cavalry in fighting on horseback. Even those who were not good at riding could quickly learn how to ride. However, in terms of cavalry, even if Jiang Pingji started preparing now, it would be difficult to beat the north borderline in terms of quality, let alone quantity. Unless, while she trained the cavalry, she also trained a special unit that could restrain cavalry. Jiang Pingji's eyes darkened, and her brain began to work. Feng Jin saw that she was in a state of deep thought and could not help but interlock her fingers. He knew that his lord was thinking of a solution, so he did not disturb her. He just waited for her to finish thinking. It's not impossible to deal with cavalry. For Jiang Pingji, there was no unit that was invincible. Even if it was the special genetic warfare force formed by the Human Alliance, they were not invincible. They could still encounter natural enemies. Similarly, it was even more impossible for the simple and crude light cavalry like the 3 tribes of the north borderline to be invincible. Feng Jin asked, "What do you have in mind, my lord?" Jiang Pingji said, "I want to train an army that specializes in killing horses. The horse farms of Dongqing are in Sangzhou, and Sangzhou is the territory of the Mangs. They are not on the same side as us. If we want to buy enough warhorses through this channel, I'm afraid we will have to go bankrupt. If war breaks out in the north borderline, they will also keep an eye on the whereabouts of the horses. It is not realistic for us to make a last-minute effort to expand the cavalry." Zhang Ping, who was at the side, said, "My lord, do you want to play to your strengths and avoid fighting with the cavalry, and instead develop a way to restrain them?" When it came to horse warfare, even Zhongzhou, which had the strongest national power, did not dare to say that it could defeat the north borderline. Instead of competing with the cavalry, it was better to find another way and develop a special unit that specialized in restraining the cavalry. This was indeed an idea. Jiang Pingji nodded and said, "Warhorses are the other life of the cavalry. Once they lose their warhorses, the cavalry is as fragile as a snail with its shell removed. We can now produce our own iron. We can make long swords and heavy shields. If we let different units work together, for example, there are soldiers who specialize in holding heavy shields to resist the cavalry's first charge, and there are other soldiers who use long swords or long spears to stab and kill the warhorses." This was just an idea, and the actual implementation still needed to be tested. For example, how strong the cavalry's charge was, what kind of heavy shields and strength could block the enemy, and how to protect the rear formation from chaos. Jiang Pingji said again, "Huaiyu, you have seen the penetrating power of the bed crossbow before, right?" Bed crossbow. Using the bed crossbow to deal with the cavalry. Feng Jin nodded and said doubtfully, "But the bed crossbow is heavy and not easy to move. If it's used against the cavalry, I'm afraid it's beyond our power." Zhang Ping shook his head and said to Feng Jin, "Huaiyu, you are wrong. What my lord means is that if the bed crossbow can be moved like the cavalry, how much damage can it cause to the cavalry? The bed crossbow can be placed on the chariot, so it's naturally more convenient to move. Of course, we can also install wheels on the bed crossbow, but the tension of the bed crossbow is too great. Once the arrow is fired, it will move the entire chariot." The thinking of a technical geek was more agile than that of a normal person. Zhang Ping's direction of thinking was naturally different from Feng Jin's. "We can give it a try." Feng Jin recalled the penetrating power and shooting range of the bed crossbow, and he felt a little more confident. Jiang Pingji poured a bucket of cold water on him. She said, "Adding wheels to the bed crossbow or installing it on the chariot can indeed make the bed crossbow more flexible, but compared to the cavalry, it's still too slow. It's a fantasy to rely on this to deal with the cavalry. At most, it can catch them off guard and pose a threat to the first charge. When the enemy realizes it, this move won't work. Jiang Pingji added, although the lethality of the improved crossbow is not as good as the bed crossbow, its mobility and flexibility are far better than the latter. If we build a unit that specializes in restraining the cavalry, we can let the soldiers use the improved crossbow. Such soldiers can be called archer infantry. Feng Jin could understand. It was equivalent to the previous troops, but the number of people was increased by more than 10 times. Chapter 557. There were many types of cavalry, but there was no detailed division of troops in this era. The types of troops were very simple. For example, most of the cavalry in the north borderline were light cavalry. They lacked mineral veins, so the armor of the soldiers was naturally not made of copper and iron. It was all woven with special rattan. This was similar to their ancestors, the Qiangwu tribe. The rattan armor of the Qiangwu tribe was repeatedly soaked in oil and supplemented with special craftsmanship. It was very tough and had a good defense. The key was that it was light. However, looking at the outcome of the Qiangwu tribe, hundreds of thousands of cavalrymen were burned to death by Prime Minister Huangfu. The three tribes of the north borderline learned a lesson from their ancestors and changed the craftsmanship of rattan armor. It seemed that they were not afraid of fire anymore. The situation of the infantry of the north borderline was similar to that of the cavalry. They wore rattan armor and held broadswords or spears. As for the division of troops and cooperation in battle. Oh, was there such a thing? Jiang Pingji had fought with the Tsing-Yi army so far. The opponents were all unarmored soldiers. Their combat power was less than 5%. The elite troops and infantry of the north borderline were not comparable to the third-rate troops like the Tsing-Yi army. Their numbers alone were enough to scare people. To deal with such an enemy, she naturally had to show a serious attitude and let them see the art of war. Therefore, it was very important to classify the troops. It would be a nightmare for a single troop type to encounter a troop type that could restrain it. Jiang Pingji explained her idea. She was prepared to divide the troops under her into different troops and carry out targeted training. Feng Jin said, "Time is too tight. We don't have enough manpower. I'm afraid it will be difficult. No matter how difficult it is, we have to give it a try. Otherwise, we can only sit and wait for death." If the north borderline sent out troops, they would definitely need time to prepare. Jiang Pingji could seize the time to train the new troops. In ancient times, many men were recruited into the military camp. After a few days of training, they could be pulled to the battlefield. However, the combat power and quality of those soldiers were not good. The training period for the new troops recruited by Jiang Pingji was at least half a year. The training time was concentrated in winter and summer. The harsh weather could better temper one's will and body. As for spring and autumn, they helped with the spring plowing in spring, helped with the autumn harvest in autumn, and continued training in their free time. Anyway, they could not stop. When he entered Jiang Pingji's military camp, he was given training periods throughout the year. He was only allowed 1 day off every month. With this kind of training, the soldiers could definitely be considered as elite soldiers. Not to mention that most of them had participated in more than one battle. Their combat experience and quality were far stronger than those fresh recruits. They were not people who could be compared to the miscellaneous soldiers who were here to make up the numbers. They could easily take on 5 of them at once. Almost the next day, the news of Anyina's sudden death spread to the other 3 districts of Fengyi County. When Qiguan Rang received the news, the sky was dark. He was working on documents with an oil lamp. He was so sleepy that his eyelids were drooping. When he heard the news, It was as if a bolt of lightning had struck him from head to toe. He was so shocked that he immediately woke up. Su Ke's reaction was almost the same. He dropped the work at hand, wrote a letter, and sent it to Xiangyang district overnight. The only ones who were calm and composed were Wei Xi and Yang Si of Qingan district. To be precise, there was only Wei Xi. Yang Si asked, "Why aren't you anxious? The north borderline has the ambition of wolves. When they send their troops this time, their military strength will definitely not be weak. How can the military strength of Chongzhou withstand their iron hooves? Once the borders are invaded, I'm afraid Dongqing will follow the same path as Nanxing. I'm afraid your lord's head will be in danger." Yang Si did not care who would be the emperor of Dongqing, but it definitely could not be the foreign tribes of the north borderline. Wei Xi was not anxious. Instead, he laughed. Don't worry. The north borderline probably won't be able to attack this time. They still have a head full of lawsuits." Yang Si was surprised and hurriedly asked him, "You're such a torturous fox. If you have something to say, just say it. Aren't you afraid of being beaten up? Tell me in detail, why can't the north borderline attack this time? They've been coveting Dongqing for a long time. Now that the war in the north is endless and the war in the south is incessant, this is the best time for the north borderline to send their troops south. Could it be that the three tribes of the north borderline are in internal strife?" Wei Xi shook his head. The current king of the north borderline is extremely dignified. He's in his prime and has strong methods of ruling. He's already unified the forces of the north borderline since he became the king. Before he's in his twilight years or dies, the internal affairs of the north borderline won't be chaotic. Yang Si did not understand. If there was no internal strife in the north borderline, why couldn't they attack the south? Wei Xi said, "Buddha says, it can't be said." Yang Si said angrily, "Nonsense. You're just asking for a beating." He had made a bad friend by mistake. Wei Xi had already sent a letter to Xiangyang district regarding this issue. Others did not understand, but he believed that Jiang Pingji would definitely believe his words. Qiguan Rang, Su Ke, and Wei Xi's letters arrived almost one after another. The three messengers rushed over on horseback overnight. Jiang Pingji tore open the seal and took out the neatly folded letter inside. She first read Qiguan Rang's letter, which arrived first, then Su Ke's, and finally Wei Xi's. Unlike the previous two who asked about countermeasures, Wei Xi's letter contained only a few words. It was these few words that made Jiang Pingji's brows relax. Her eyes were filled with joy. At the beginning of the 11th month of the 20th year of Tianwu, there was a horse plague in the north borderline. The war horses contracted the disease and died suddenly. She read the letter, took a flint, and burned it to ashes. "If that's the case, it looks like I'll have to ask Uncle Gu to fish for the last sum of money in the north borderline. Fish harder." Her eyes seemed to sparkle. She spread out a piece of paper, ground it, picked up a brush, and wrote a letter. "Guards, call the chief supervisor of the brick kiln here. I have something important to discuss with him." Among the armies of the three tribes in the north borderline, the ratio of infantry to cavalry had reached a ratio of 1 to 2. If a large number of war horses contracted the disease and died, it was tantamount to cutting off their right-hand men. They would not be able to recover their peak combat power in the next few years, let alone go south. This bought a lot of time for Jiang Pingji to grow. Previously, she felt that there was not enough time, but now she was slightly relieved. However, she did not completely believe the contents of the letter. It was not because she suspected Wei Xi, but because of the butterfly effect. Who knew if the horse plague in the north borderline would occur regularly? Perhaps it was swallowed by the butterfly's wings, or perhaps time had moved backward. Before it was completely confirmed, Jiang Pingji would not let down her guard. She still had to make preparations. However, regardless of whether the North Borderline had the ability to send troops south, the business there would not last long. Jiang Pingji planned to fish for the last sum of money and swindle millions of strings of coins. The supervisor of the brick kiln rushed over overnight. Jiang Pingji ordered him to open the brick kiln again and fire a large batch of exquisite glassware. Previously, when she swindled the North Borderline, the amount of glassware fired was limited, and it was sold slowly, creating an illusion that glass was very valuable. Almost every noble in the North Borderline had a glass tea set as a fashion. Those noble ladies in the North Borderline liked to collect glass jewelry. Wearing a set of glass would make them look good and make them the focus of banquets. More noble ladies could not buy it even if they had the money. Now that Dongqing and the North Borderline were about to go to war, Jiang Pingji planned to make a fortune before the relationship broke down. Chapter 558. In order to protect the secret of the glass to the greatest extent, the vicinity of the brick kiln was heavily guarded. Everyone who worked in the kiln was strictly monitored. Jiang Pingji also had a detailed grasp of their family members and the recent flow of money. Of course, as compensation, all the craftsmen who worked in the kiln could get a generous monthly salary. The old and young in the family could also get easier jobs. Children of the right age had the priority to enter the college to receive education. Under multiple measures, the secret of the glass was well protected. Every firing was extremely confidential. The fired glass had to be registered, and the defective products had to be strictly destroyed. In order to whet the appetite of the noble ladies of the Northern Borderline, the quantity of the previous firing was relatively small. There were no more than 100 sets scattered. Now, in order to cheat the Northern Borderline of the last sum of money, Jiang Pingji ordered people to fire in large quantities. They worked day and night. The craftsman of the brick kiln was sweating profusely at the desperate effort. He was afraid that he would receive the wrong order while he was still asleep. By the time Gu Axian arrived with the caravan, Jiang Pingji had already fired thousands of sets of glassware. Many of them were exquisite glass jewelry. Even though Gu Axian knew that these things were not worth much, when they were placed together, his heart could not take it. Gu Axian hurriedly asked, "Young master, what are you doing?" Glass did not cost much, but it could be sold at a sky-high price. It should be sold slowly and strive to maximize the profit. Once this thing became widespread, it would not be worth much. Jiang Pingji said to Gu Axian, "Uncle Gu, don't worry. Have you heard about the sudden death of the princess of the Northern Borderline, Anyina? Now that the royal family of Dongqing has occupied Qinzhou, Prince Changshu has led the troops to besiege them. The two are in a stalemate. Now that the princess of the Northern Borderline has died, I'm worried that the Northern Borderline will use this as an excuse to attack Dongqing. Even if they don't fight, in your opinion, will Prince Changshu collude with the Northern Borderline?" Gu Axian could not help but fall into deep thought. He was a big merchant who did business in the north and south. Naturally, he was well informed. He knew about the sudden death of the princess of the Northern Borderline. Gu Axian asked, "Young master, do you think that once the war breaks out in the Northern Borderline, it will be difficult to do business?" Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "If the North Borderline starts a war with Dongqing, it will definitely involve the entire country. Even if the noble ladies covet and want to buy a luxury item like glass, I reckon they will have to think twice. What's more, there's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. I'm just afraid that if they find out about the secret of the glass, Uncle Gu, you'll have to pay for it." In the entire North Borderline, only Gu Axian's treasure house sold glass. If they found out that glass was worthless, let alone something that belonged to the Heavenly Palace, they would inevitably fly into a rage out of humiliation and implicate Gu Axian. This was not what Jiang Pingji wanted to see. Gu Axian frowned and probed, so, little boss intends to make one last deal. Get rich before the war at the northern borderline. Jiang Pingji did not tell Gu Axian about the horse plague. Apart from her and Wei Ci, no one else would know about it. If there really was a horse plague, this last deal would probably cause a certain blow to the economy of the northern borderline. The more she earned, the more unlucky the northern borderline would be, and the longer it would take for them to completely recover. These thoughts flashed through her mind. She nodded and said, "Yes, that's what I'm thinking. However, if all the glass is dumped in the northern borderline, we won't be able to consume it in a short time. This is also very risky. So, I want to ask Uncle Gu to sell a portion of it to Zhongzhou and other countries. As for the business at the northern borderline, after selling this deal, withdraw as soon as possible. I don't know if this will have any impact on the businesses under Uncle Gu's name." The businesses were all managed by Gu Axian. He was the expert. Jiang Pingji, as an outsider, had to listen to the opinions of the experts. Gu Axian smiled and said, "Little boss, you don't have to be so polite. The business at the northern borderline isn't very prosperous, especially in recent years. The money we earn is getting less and less. It's indeed time to change places. It's a good idea to take this opportunity to stop." The northern borderline was getting more and more malice from Dongqing. Naturally, the businesses of the merchants were getting more and more difficult. If not for Gu Xian's wide connections in the northern borderline and the ladies who liked to take care of his business, the treasure house would probably have closed down long ago. Gu Xian was not the least bit unwilling to blackmail the northern borderline and pack up and leave. He carefully selected a batch of glass. The quality was similar to or slightly better than the glass he had sold previously. There were more than 2,000 sets. These are all sold to the northern borderline. If we go through the normal sales route, we definitely won't be able to finish them all. If we want to get rid of them quickly, the black market is a good way to dispose of stolen goods. However, I'm afraid the price can't be as high as before. If the other party lowers the price, it has to be at least 50% or more." When he said the last sentence, even though Gu Axian was used to seeing big scenes, he still couldn't help but feel his heart ache. There were more than 2,000 sets of glass. If they were sold slowly according to the previous price, they could earn at least 140 million strings of coins. What kind of concept was that? The national treasury of Dongqing in a normal year was only 150 million strings of coins. This was under the situation where there were no disasters in the country. If there were floods, droughts, earthquakes or famine from time to time, the national treasury's annual revenue would be less than 90 million strings of coins. Jiang Pingji narrowed her eyes and said, "Uncle Gu, you can do it according to your own ideas. It's fine as long as you can get rid of them in the shortest time possible. You can exchange all these glass for silver or sheepskin. I don't care if you earn less. Without the northern borderline, we still have the 4 factions of Nanman to cheat. The faraway Zhongzhou, Beiyuan, Xichang and even the southern mainland of Dongqing. They are all markets. We don't have to worry about not having a place to earn money. We can only earn more money in the future if we are willing to make a small profit." Gu Axian couldn't help but smile at Jiang Pingji's words. He felt more confident. "Young master, please rest assured. Your servant will definitely not disappoint you." Gu Axian solemnly bowed. In the past, he was grateful for Gu Min's appreciation of him. Now, he was convinced by Jiang Pingji's trust and generosity. He sighed in his heart. They were indeed mother and daughter. Jiang Pingji suddenly thought of something and instructed him. "Uncle Gu, after this business, you don't have to buy any more horses." Gu Axian was surprised. Young master, why is that? The horse farms in Dongqing were all in Tsang Prefecture. They had almost become the Meng's property. The previous generation of the Liu and Mengs were somewhat despicable. It was basically impossible to buy good war horses from them. Even if it was possible, the money spent was not something Jiang Pingji could afford. Chapter 559. So it was for his own good. Gu Xian's heart warmed and a warm expression appeared on his face. Young master is thoughtful. If that's the case, I won't buy horses this time. I'll try my best to buy sheepskin and wool. Jiang Pingji looked calm on the surface, but she felt slightly awkward. She said it nicely, but it was not because of that. She was just afraid that the source of the horse plague would spread to Dongqing. However, she could not tell Gu Xian about the horse plague, so she could only use other reasons to avoid it. Jiang Pingji teased him with a smile. 3,000 horses are enough for now. If I buy another batch, I'm afraid my family business won't be able to support them. War horses were different from ordinary horses. They ate better food and needed more meticulous care. The consumption was also more terrifying. Gu Xian exposed her with a smile. I believe other people's cries of poverty. Young master, aren't you fooling people by saying you're poor? Over the past half a year, Jiang Pingji had cheated a lot of money from the fools in the north borderline. It was a total of more than 5 million strings of coins. Gu Xian took all the glass away and quietly left Xiangyang district. After that, the firing of glass stopped. The brick kiln resumed its boring life of firing bricks every day. This year's summer was exceptionally long. The drought lasted until mid-September. There was not a single drop of rain. It would be the autumn harvest in half a month, but the weather was still the same. Even Jiang Pingji was a little worried. Those who knew her would not offend her at such a time because she would be very irritable. Unfortunately, someone was blind. After approving documents for a whole night, Jiang Pingji sprawled out on the pile of bamboo slips and took a nap. Familiar footsteps came from outside. My lord, something bad has happened. The voice was like thunder. Not only did it wake Jiang Pingji up, but the audience in the streaming room was also shocked. Jiang Pingji opened her eyes and hooked a nearby table with her feet. Then she sat up and leaned against it. She looked at Dian Yen in front of her. Her eyelids were still a little sore. What happened? Dian Yen was a recruit who had an outstanding performance in the previous battle. Jiang Pingji promoted him to a centurion of the recruit camp and transferred him to Qingan district to protect Wei Xi. Her reason was that her advisor's appearance was too unsafe. She could be at ease if Dian Yen protected Wei Xi. Dian Yen had just gone to Qingan district but was sent back by Wei Xi. Good steel should be used on the blade's edge. He was very safe in Qingan district. Why waste a valiant general to protect him? Therefore, Dian Yen had now become the head of Jiang Pingji's guards. Dian Yen caught his breath. There are about 100 people outside the city. They claim to be the prefect of Fengyi County. They represent the prefect to supervise the counties and villages and announce government decrees. Jiang Pingji was stunned. What? What's that? She was still dizzy from exhaustion, but the viewers in the live broadcast room were very awake. They didn't understand what the term inspection deputy of the prefect meant, but they understood the term commander-in-chief. Zhang Fei was the one who beat the inspection deputy of prefect. Mingming's little white rabbit, damn, the streamer is going to live stream beating the deputy of the prefect. Ye Qingzhou, speaking of the inspection deputy of the prefect, I can't help but think of the inspection deputy of the prefect who was beaten to death by Zhang Fei in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. The scene of him whipping the inspection deputy of the prefect was super satisfying. Streamer, Do you think the inspection deputy of the prefect and the inspection deputy of the prefect are the same? Kanglin Fei Shue, no, didn't someone say that Liu Bei was the one who beat up the inspection deputy of the prefect in Three Kingdoms? Zhang Fei was the scapegoat. Vegetarian number. Zhang Fei was a fair-skinned young man with excellent calligraphy, but he was described as a black-skinned burly man and a hothead in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Jiang Pingji glanced at the bullet screen in the live broadcast room. The various inspection deputy of the prefect made her dizzy. She rubbed the space between her eyebrows and said, "The inspection deputy of the prefect sent by the county chief of Fengyi County for an inspection." Dian Yan said with an ugly expression, "Yes, that's what that group of people said." According to the official position, Jiang Pingji was just a small district magistrate. At most, she was in charge of the affairs of Xiangyang district. There was also a county chief above her. Logically speaking, she had no right to extend her hands into the other three counties. But now, the entire Fengyi County belonged to her, and troops were stationed everywhere. She was not the county chief, but she was better than the county chief. Who the hell was that inspection deputy of the prefect? Jiang Pingji frowned. She was rather displeased, but she said, "Send someone to welcome him and test his intentions." Whether it was Xiangyang district, Qingan district, Maolin district or Jiaoping district, when they fell into the hands of the Tsing-Yi army, she did not see any local military forces in Fengyi County, nor did she see any effective resistance. The Tsing-Yi army relied on overwhelming numbers to break into the cities and wreak havoc in the villages. Now she was about to tidy up Fengyi County, and the wastelands that were cultivated in Xiangyang district would be ready to harvest in about half a month. At this time, an inspection deputy of the prefect sent by the county chief appeared. Did he think she was as easy to fool as a 3-year-old child? Dian Yan answered, "Yes." The so-called inspection deputy of the prefect was actually the inspection deputy of the prefect, an important official in each county. He supervised the counties on behalf of the county chief, and announced government decrees and justice. Although his position was low, the authority he held was not light. He conveyed religious orders, supervised subordinates, examined cases and prisons, and investigated illegal acts. He did everything he could. Even if Dian Yan did not investigate, Jiang Pingji could guess the inspection deputy of the prefect's intentions. The audience in the streaming room were not stupid. What could a minor official who came to inspect on behalf of his immediate superior be doing at this time? Zhongfei Yingxingchen, F***CK, these people are here to pick the ready-made fruit. Miyuzi, the streamer is the district magistrate of Xiangyang district appointed by the emperor. The inspection deputy of the prefect can't do anything to the streamer. At most, he can be picky and deliberately make things difficult for the streamer. However, I'm afraid that the streamer's Maolin district, Jiaoping district and Qingan district will have to be handed over. And Zhanghuan, F***CK, it can't be. Where were these people when the Tsing-Yi army was ravaging the people? Now that the streamer has used her own troops to recover the other 3 districts, King inspection deputy of the prefect sent by the county chief jumped out. How shameless! Liu Siji Lianming, don't you know the streamer's character? Once it's in her hands, no one can covet it. If the inspection deputy of the prefect came to go through the formalities, he should be able to leave Xiangyang district safely. If he had ulterior motives, he would be beheaded. In the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Zhang Fei beat the inspection deputy of the prefect in a drunken rage, but at least no one died. If someone died, Liu Bei would not be able to bear the consequences. However, Jiang Pingji had 20,000 troops in her hands. Most of these 20,000 troops were veterans who had been on the battlefield and killed people. The newly recruited soldiers had also been trained for a whole summer. How could their combat qualities be compared to those ordinary soldiers who were born from the grassroots? If the inspection deputy of the prefect was blind and really made things difficult for Jiang Pingji and asked her to hand over the other 3 districts, if she was in a bad mood, someone would definitely die. Wan Buffa Gaofi, bring a stool over and sit in the front row to watch the show. I'll bet a spicy strip that the inspection deputy of the prefect will be done for. Chiu Zhaizhao Zhongguo Guipu, I hope he has some sense and doesn't do anything stupid. I feel that the streamer has been in a particularly bad mood these few days. Chapter 560. The district magistrate was just a small official, and if the inspection deputy of the prefect went back and said a few bad things about him to the county chief, he would be in serious trouble. However, this was only for ordinary district magistrates. Was Jiang Pingji an ordinary district magistrate? The sun was blazing in the sky, and the air was extremely stuffy. The inspection deputy of the prefect and his entourage had been waiting outside the city for 2 whole hours, and they were sweating profusely from the heat. The plump inspection deputy of the prefect was even more disheveled. In order to take Jiang Pingji down a notch, he had put on a full set of clothes. Even with a manservant fanning him, he still felt extremely hot, and sweat kept seeping out of his pores, drenching his inner shirt. The people outside were sallow and emaciated, but his face was as plump as a full moon, with white and tender fat piled on his face. There was a hint of malice in his eyes, and his face was full of impatience and irritation, making him look unapproachable. The people lining up to enter the city would occasionally glance at them, lowering their heads and whispering to each other. Where did these officials come from? They're dressed in rich clothes. The middle-aged man beside him said, It's said that they're the inspection deputy of the prefect from above. They're not good people. The inspection deputy of the prefect's position was light and powerful, and he often used his position to ask for bribes from his subordinates. Many people had no choice but to feign civility with him and secretly bribe him in order to keep their lowly positions. The more greedy inspection deputy of the prefect would even instruct others to exploit the villagers. The drought in the north and the fight between the Tsing-Yi army and the Red Lotus group had affected the spring plowing and autumn harvest for the past 2 years. Those who were slightly wealthier were already starving, but the inspection deputy of the prefect was still smooth and had a ruddy complexion, and he was as heavy as 2 adult men. It was ridiculous to say that he was incorruptible. How much salary could an inspection deputy of the prefect earn if he did not have extra income? The people laughed. Why were they chased aside and not allowed to enter the city? The middle-aged man clicked his tongue and said sarcastically, It's not that they don't want to enter the city, they're probably blocked from entering the city. I really hope that the sun is hotter today, so that these corrupt officials and their lackeys die. Which time has the inspection deputy of the prefect not peeled off a layer of oil from everyone? One of them said proudly, Our district magistrate is different from those vermin of the past. If this inspection deputy of the prefect dares to mess around, I'll definitely break his legs. A few commoners discussed in whispers, occasionally glancing at the inspection deputy of prefect who kept raising his hand to wipe his sweat. On the other side, the inspection deputy of the prefect was already impatient from waiting. He urged his subordinates to hurry up again while thinking about how to punish Jiang Pingji. At this moment, there was a sudden commotion at the city gate. The citizens who were queuing up to enter the city spontaneously made way. The inspection deputy of the prefect tried his best to stretch his neck, trying to see what was happening over there. His neck was also full of fat, and above his shoulders was a huge head. There was no neck at all. After a long while, Dian Yan led hundreds of tall soldiers armed with swords and spears forward. The blades were snow-white and sharp, giving people an inexplicable chill. Dian Yan's figure was tall and muscular, his complexion dark. Even though he was dressed neatly, he still exuded the aura of a bandit. You are the inspection deputy of the prefect? The deputy of the prefect was infuriated. Where did this black-faced burly man come from? How dare he be so rude to him? The inspection deputy of the prefect had wanted to display his authority as an official, but when he saw the broadsword hanging from Dian Yan's waist and the neat rows of soldiers behind him, his eyelids twitched subconsciously. Exactly. He had arrived outside the city 2 hours ago. He had thought that it wouldn't be long before the district magistrate would come out to greet him in fear and trepidation. He did not expect the district magistrate to leave him hanging for 2 hours. Now that he had finally arrived, he came with such a lineup. It was extremely rude. I wonder what instructions do you have for me this time? Dian Yan asked the inspection deputy of the prefect without batting an eyelid, as if he was interrogating a criminal. The inspection deputy of the prefect laughed angrily. I heard that the district magistrate of Xiangyang district disregarded the laws of Dongqing and used his private troops without authorization to oppress the citizens of the other 3 districts in Fengyi County. As the inspection deputy of the prefect, I have the duty of patrolling and supervising. I followed the county chief's order to thoroughly investigate this matter and see if the district magistrate has any disloyal intentions. That was a serious matter. Dian Yan secretly frowned. He knew that the inspection deputy of the prefect was up to no good, but he did not expect him to be so shameless as to directly threaten him. My lord has always served the country wholeheartedly. When has he ever had any disloyal intentions? The Qingyi army has wreaked havoc in Fengyi County. If my lord had not taken pity on the citizens and dispatched troops to drive the Qingyi army out, would the citizens of the other 3 districts have such peaceful days? This sentiment is clear to the sun and the moon. Dian Yan said, since the inspection deputy of the prefect has been ordered to thoroughly investigate this matter, I hope that you can carry it out impartially and prove my lord's innocence. The inspection deputy of the prefect felt a little better. It was good that he knew to be afraid. He knew that Lu Shi was Lu Shi's son, but so what? The young boy was ignorant, and no matter how forceful Lu Shi was, he could not do anything. It was Lu Shi's fault. As a district magistrate of Xiangyang district, how could she be qualified to mobilize troops to recover the other 3 districts? However, the inspection deputy of the prefect soon realized that something was wrong. More than 100 people were welcomed into the city. The prosperous scene on both sides of the street surprised him, followed by greed and evil thoughts. He had been the inspection deputy of the prefect for many years, but he had never seen a district that was so well governed. There were countless refugees outside, but only this place was bustling and prosperous, like a scene of prosperity. He was not impressed by Jiang Pingji's governance ability. Instead, he was thinking about how much he could extort. How could Lu Shi's son be short of money? Such emotions did not last long. He was drenched in a cold sweat when he realized that there was a team of soldiers standing on both sides of the street with swords and spears in their hands. All of them stood straight, their white blades gleaming with a cold light, and their eyes fell on him in unison. Even if the inspection deputy of the prefect was not very knowledgeable, he could still feel a cold aura. He asked with a slightly pale face, "These are," Dian Yan said, reporting to the inspection deputy of the prefect, "These are the private troops under my lord." All of them. The inspection deputy of the prefect's heart skipped a beat and his scalp went numb. He did not dare to think about how many soldiers there were in the city. Dian Yan sneered and pretended to be concerned. "Inspection deputy of the prefect, what's wrong with you? These soldiers are so mighty. District Magistrate Lu has trained his troops well." Dian Yan continued, "Exactly. All of these soldiers have been on the battlefield and killed the Qingyi army. They are extremely brave. All of them have seen blood." The inspection deputy of the prefect broke out in a cold sweat. He finally understood why he felt that the air was strangely cold after entering the city. Damn, it was the murderous aura. If he had not been sitting in the open carriage, the inspection deputy of the prefect's legs would have turned to jelly and he would have collapsed. He had to mentally prepare himself not to be frightened by such a large lineup. No matter how powerful Lu Shi was, could he be more powerful than the law? If he did not want to be accused of treason, he must hand over Jiaoping District, Chang'an District, and Maolin District today. Thinking of this, the inspection deputy of the prefect felt a little more confident. At the entrance of the district headquarters, there were 2 guards standing on both sides of the gate, looking straight ahead. The inspection deputy of the prefect craned his neck, but did not see the person suspected to be Lu Shi. Why didn't he come out to welcome him? Dian Yen said, "Inspection deputy of the prefect, my lord is already waiting for you in the main hall." This attitude made the inspection deputy of the prefect, who was always flattered and worshipped wherever he went, extremely displeased, but he could not vent his dissatisfaction. He stepped on the stool of the sedan chair and got down. The guards behind him were about to follow, but the soldiers on both sides suddenly swarmed forward and captured all of them. The inspection deputy of the prefect's expression changed drastically, and his eyes widened in shock. "You want to rebel?" Dian Yen smiled and captured the guards on both sides of the inspection deputy of the prefect, removing the weapons in their hands. Chapter 561. The inspection deputy of the prefect's chest rose and fell rapidly, and sweat trickled down his chubby face. It looked greasy, and one could touch a handful of oil with just a touch. You dare. Do you think I will harm your county magistrate?" The inspection deputy of the prefect had already been scared out of his wits by the murderous aura of the 2 rows of soldiers, and now he felt extremely insecure. Now that his guards had been taken down and their weapons had been taken away, he felt like a salted fish on the chopping block who was struggling to catch his breath. He flapped his tail in an attempt to escape, sweating even more profusely. Dian Yen smiled and said, "Of course I'm not afraid. With your abilities, who can you hurt?" The inspection deputy of the prefect fell silent for a moment, feeling that he had been underestimated. Although Dian Yen believed that he would not harm Jiang Pingji, why did his words carry a hint of disdain? A salted fish was a salted fish. Apart from struggling a little, what else could it do? Dian Yen stretched out his hand, gesturing to invite the prefect to enter the district headquarters. "Deputy Prefect, this way, my lord has been waiting for you in the main hall for a long time." The inspection deputy of the prefect swallowed nervously. His inner shirt was already drenched in sweat and stuck to his skin, making him very uncomfortable. Striding forward with his strong legs, the inspection deputy of the prefect followed Dian Yen into the district headquarters. The deputy of the prefect thought that since Xiangyang district was so prosperous, the district headquarters should be extremely luxurious, but that was not the case. If Dian Yen hadn't said that this was the district headquarters, he would have suspected that he had run into the house of a destitute aristocratic family. There were no fake mountains or flowers in the garden, nor were there any pavilions, terraces, or pavilions. There was only a piece of empty land with a few bamboo clothes-drying racks placed beside it. Passing through the courtyard, he took a few more steps forward and bypassed the stone screen. The main hall with its door wide open came into view. The inspection deputy of the prefect squinted his eyes, trying hard to see the scene in the main hall clearly. Jiang Pingji had been waiting in the main hall for a while, secretly chatting with the audience in the streaming room, trying to guess what the deputy of the prefect would look like. When Dian Yen brought the person over, the live stream room was filled with wailing, shouting that they were blind and needed a good-looking face to please their eyes. The inspection deputy of the prefect was dressed neatly, but due to the hot and dry weather, his forehead, cheeks, and chubby neck were all sweating profusely. After sitting in the carriage for a long time, the hem of his clothes was slightly wrinkled, and his collar was slightly askew. He did not look very well. The viewers in the live streaming room were used to seeing all kinds of handsome men in ancient times. When they saw a man like the inspection deputy of the prefect, they all expressed that they were blind. Chow Mi Fei, host, are you sure you didn't go to the wrong place? Why did the actor playing second senior brother come here? Cat Demon Monarch, ha ha ha, the one above, why are you insulting second senior brother like that? Second senior brother was also an awe-inspiring canopy marshal before he was reincarnated as a pig. He wasn't a pigman, alright. This inspection deputy of the prefect was a living pig demon in human form. If he were to really play the role of second senior brother who had been reincarnated as a pig by mistake, he wouldn't even need to wear the pig head and the big belly props. With a head full of fat intestines, he would be playing the role of second senior brother in person. Yun Jian Lu Yun. Phew, I'm relieved. Finally, I see an ugly ancient man. Previously, when I was watching the live stream, I realized that almost none of the streamer's subordinates were ugly. I thought that ancient genes were better and modern genes had regressed. Now that I see the deputy of the prefect, I'm relieved. Xiao San Tian, you mortals who judge a book by its cover. Like the streamer, I value the inner qualities more. I will never laugh at this guy just because he looks like a pig. Damn, who's stopping me? Can't you see there's a pig here? Don't steal my butcher knife. Gue Kai Guo Fengxiu, #despise. The position of the inspection deputy of the prefect is light and powerful. It was a cushy job in ancient times. Those who can sit in this position for a long time are generally not simple. Look at the current situation in Dongqing, then look at the tonnage of this inspection deputy of the prefect. Do you think he's simple? Prime Minister Zhuge Liang, he's not simple, but there's a saying that goes, one man can defeat 10 men with great strength. No matter how scheming this inspection deputy of the prefect is, can he scare away the 3 counties in the hands of the streamer? If he doesn't do anything, he can still live. If he courts death, even Buddha can't save him. The audience in the live stream room made jokes and acted cute and funny, which made Jiang Pingji's mood improve a lot. She also found the inspection deputy of the prefect more pleasing to the eye. The inspection deputy of the prefect stepped into the main hall and saw a handsome young man who was no more than 16 or 17 years old sitting at the head of the table. His eyebrows reached his temples, his lips were as red as blood, and his youthful face had the unique vigor of a young man. The corners of his eyes were slightly tilted, and his moderately thick lips were tightly pursed, giving off an inexplicable sense of dominance. If he were facing other young men, the inspection deputy of the prefect would have long put on a posture, but after experiencing Dian Yan's intimidation, he was a little timid. After greeting him, Jiang Pingji's attitude towards him was lukewarm. The inspection deputy of the prefect put on a fake smile and said some nice words to liven up the atmosphere. However, Jiang Pingji was unmoved by force or persuasion, and her attitude did not soften at all. However, although her attitude was cold, she was not very aggressive, which made the inspection deputy of the prefect feel a little relieved. He remembered the purpose of his visit and asked sternly, I heard that District Magistrate Liu used his private troops to occupy 3 counties. According to his script, Jiang Pingji should deny it in fear and trepidation, and then both parties would wrangle. He would take the opportunity to extract some benefits, intimidate the young district magistrate, explain the general idea with righteous words, accept some bribes, and then report Liu Shi to the county chief. In this way, he could not only gain benefits from Liu Shi, but also claim credit in front of the county chief. Wouldn't it be the best of both worlds? But, Jiang Pingji nodded honestly and said, yes, is there a problem, inspection deputy of the prefect? The inspection deputy of the prefect did not react and thought that she had denied it, so he said subconsciously, don't panic, District Magistrate Liu. I am under orders to inspect Xiangyang District. If these are just rumors spread by outsiders, I will definitely report it to the county chief impartially. You did not use your private troops. What? After talking for a long time, he finally realized something was wrong. Jiang Pingji smiled faintly and said, I used my private troops to occupy the other 3 counties. Do you have any more problems, inspection deputy of the prefect? The inspection deputy of the prefect's fat face trembled, and his fair skin gradually lost its color. An unprecedented sense of crisis rushed straight to his head. This doesn't make sense. He said in a trembling voice, is District Magistrate Liu trying to rebel? Jiang Pingji avoided the question and asked in return, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Do you have any evidence to say that I'm rebelling? The inspection deputy of the prefect had thought of all kinds of scenarios, but he had never thought about how he should deal with Jiang Pingji's shameless behavior. He forced himself to ask, isn't occupying the 3 counties and not returning them obvious evidence? The onlookers in the live stream room could see that the inspection deputy of the prefect was now an arrow at the end of its flight, so they were enjoying the show. Gue Kai Guo Fengxiu, I think that in the script of the inspection deputy of the prefect, the streamer should be in fear and trepidation, instead of rebuking others so righteously. Alas, how am I supposed to continue acting if District Magistrate Liu doesn't follow the script? This came from the inspection deputy of the prefect, who was suffering in silence. Acatrice, I reckon that the inspection deputy of the prefect still wants to blackmail the streamer and accept bribes. Jiang Pingji chuckled. Can I say that the county chief is in cahoots with the Tsingyi army and is in cahoots with the Tsingyi army and is a traitor? Chapter 562. Don't use uncommon words, ha 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 ha, I'm dying of laughter. I'm not convinced by anything, I'm only convinced by the streamer. Lazy otaku, there are always stupid mortals who want to die. Isn't it good to be alive? The Fairy Queen's crimson, the streamer's words are both threatening and cursing. If I were the county chief, I would have been too ashamed to face anyone. As the county chief, he couldn't protect the people under his rule, so he ran away to avoid the limelight when there was a disaster. Now that the streamer has taken back the place, driven away the bandits, and taken care of the territory in good order, now he wants to stand out and use his power to oppress others. Bah! My pig teammate, you can't say that, can you? These 3 districts do not belong to the streamer. After all, he is the county chief. The opposite god's rival, so what if he is the county chief? Is it still a hereditary system where the son inherits the father's business? Fingyi County does not belong to them. Where were they when the Tsingyi army attacked? Did they lead the people and soldiers to resist the foreign bandits? They did nothing, and no one knew where they had taken refuge. Now that they have settled down, they want to pick the fruits. Dream on. I support the streamer's criticism. Jiang Pingji thought that the county chief of Fingyi County had died in the disaster of war. As the audience in the live stream said, whoever had the ability to pick the fruits that she had cultivated was welcome to try. Sending an inspection deputy of the prefect who assumed the authority of a tiger to oppress others and snatch the 3 districts from her hands. Even a daydream was not that beautiful. The inspection deputy of the prefect only swallowed his anger after a long while and said with a livid face, how can the 2 be lumped together? District Magistrate Liu, don't try to change the topic. We are talking about your private mobilization of troops to occupy the 3 districts, not about the county chief's personal words and deeds, Jiang Pingji snorted contemptuously. Why can't they be lumped together? When the Tsingyi army attacked, the county chief did not appease the people and did not lead the people and soldiers to resist the foreign enemies. Instead, he took his family and money and fled in the night. What right does he have to say that I, Liu Shi, am in the wrong just because of this? The inspection deputy of the prefect reminded me of one thing. If this matter is written into a memorial and submitted to His Majesty, how will His Majesty decide? The inspection deputy of the prefect's face was livid and bloodless. Facing the pressure exerted by her, his fat body trembled involuntarily. Fleeing from the bandit army without putting up a fight was enough for the prefectural governor to lose his position. What was even more shameless was that the county chief wanted to take advantage of Jiang Pingji. He tried to snatch away her painstaking efforts and then claim the credit for driving away the Tsing-Yi army. He would write a lengthy memorial to the throne and claim credit in front of the emperor to pave his way to a higher position. How could such a small thought escape Jiang Pingji's eyes? The inspection deputy of the prefect stammered, "District Magistrate Liu, you are threatening," Jiang Pingji said calmly, "recovering the 3 districts is my credit. Even if I'm willing to hand over the 3 counties to your county governor, let me ask you a face-slapping question. How can he guard the 3 counties with that little bit of ability? If you don't have the ability, don't take on this job. The enemy can destroy a county in just 3 to 5 days, but if the people want to rebuild the county, it may take 3 to 5 years. Deputy of the prefect, do you understand this?" She was just short of pointing at his nose and saying, "You can't do it." How could the inspection deputy of the prefect keep his face after being questioned and mocked by a young man like this? In the past, when he was inspecting the villages and counties, which official did not flatter him? Now that he was no longer in the limelight, he was being ridiculed by a fledgling kid. One could imagine how big the gap was. The inspection deputy of the prefect looked at Jiang Pingji coldly. The anger in his heart suppressed his fear and he threatened her with a fake smile. "In that case, you can go ahead and do it, District Magistrate Liu. To put it bluntly, officialdom is not a child's game. You can't rise to the top just because you have the ability. The county governor is giving you face. District Magistrate Liu, you'd better stop while you're ahead. If it weren't for the county governor's respect for your father, he would have sent a memorial to Qinzhou and sued you. It might even cost you your life. A mere district magistrate suing the county governor. Who did this kid think he was?" Jiang Pingji snorted. She looked calm and was not intimidated by the harsh words of the inspection deputy of the prefect at all. She clapped her hands. The sound of her clapping was crisp and clear. The inspection deputy of the prefect's heart suddenly tightened and he could not sit still. Outside the door, Dian Yen heard the sound and came in with a long box in his hands. The fat on the inspection deputy of the prefect's face squeezed his eyes into slits. He tried his best to widen his eyes, not daring to look away. "What are you doing?" Jiang Pingji said, "I'm showing you a treasure." "Treasure?" The inspection deputy of the prefect's mind began to spin. Could it be that District Magistrate Liu was only acting tough on the surface, but he was actually frightened? If not, why did this person want to show him a treasure? At that moment, various guesses flashed through the inspection deputy of the prefect's mind. He saw Dian Yen respectfully place the long box in front of him. The black-faced, brawny man with a terrifying aura moved cautiously, which made the inspection deputy of the prefect even more convinced that there was a precious treasure inside. She was so rude to him just now, and now she wants to bribe him with a treasure. The inspection deputy of the prefect's heart skipped a beat, and he despised Jiang Pingji even more. Was he such an easy person to get rid of? As he thought about it, he reached out and opened the box. There was a long knife with unparalleled sharpness lying inside, and the reflection of light at that moment stung his eyes. The inspection deputy of the prefect silently looked up at Dian Yen, who was half squatting down, only to see that the black-faced, brawny man had already placed his hand on the handle of the knife, picked it up easily, and placed the blade against his own neck. The inspection deputy of the prefect was dumbfounded by the sudden turn of events, and he dared not move an inch. District Magistrate Liu, the inspection deputy of the prefect swallowed nervously, cold sweat dripping down his forehead. The oily sweat slid down his cheeks and flowed past his chin, wetting the collar of his shirt. His plump body trembled like a sieve, and he looked extremely pitiful. I think the head of the inspection deputy of the prefect is quite stout. Chop it off and hang it in front of the door. It should be able to exorcise evil spirits. Jiang Pingji asked Dian Yan. Dian Yan's face was cold as he waited for his lord's instructions. My head can't exorcise evil spirits, the inspection deputy of the prefect said pitifully, even changing the way he addressed himself. Jiang Pingji said, I'm a young man in the ways of officialdom, so of course I'm not as experienced and ruthless as you. But I'm clear about one thing. I have troops in my hands, but the county chief doesn't. Even if His Majesty backs him up, he still won't be able to take back the 3 districts, let alone defend them. Go back and make it clear to him. I respect him as the county chief, but if he doesn't. Haha, given the situation in the north, it's normal for 1 or 2 county chiefs to die. The inspection deputy of the prefect was burning with rage, but his life was more important. He hurriedly said, I understand, I'll definitely convey your message. How could he hide his thoughts from Jiang Pingji? She stood up and said to Dian Yan, treat this inspection deputy of the prefect well, and make sure he sees our sincerity. Dian Yan responded in a low, muffled voice, yes, my lord. Please rest assured, I will definitely make the inspection deputy of the prefect feel at home. The inspection deputy of the prefect drew a small wound on his neck with the long knife, and he wanted to cry but had no tears. Chapter 563. The most popular item in the northern borderline this year was the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace. What was the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace? To put it bluntly, it was glass with an opaque color and impurities that glowed with colorful light. Because Guaxian fabricated a noble origin for the glass, saying that the glass was a celestial item that descended with a golden phoenix, and every piece was beautiful, the glass had another noble name, colored glass of the Heavenly Palace, implying that it was a treasure from the Heavenly Palace. The first lady to buy the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace became the focus of the circle of noblewomen in the northern borderline. Wherever she went, other people's eyes followed her. They were all fascinated by the dragon and phoenix hairpins on her temples. She also became the object of jealousy of many noble ladies. Those noble ladies kept urging their servants to ask for information from the treasure house. They insisted on getting the same or even better glass hairpins. The hairpin was translucent, with a dragon and a phoenix entwined together. The scales of the dragon and the feathers of the phoenix were fine and lifelike. The phoenix spread its wings as if it was about to fly, and the handsome dragon looked like it was about to soar to the 9th heaven. A string of transparent beads was held in the mouth of the phoenix and the dragon, which was shining brightly under the light. Women could not resist such beautiful and shiny things, but there was no news from the treasure house. Facing so many jealous and hateful gazes, the lady enjoyed it very much. Thanks to her free publicity, the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace quickly became popular in the circle of noblewomen in the northern borderline. As a businessman, Guaxian whetted everyone's appetite, and then found an opportunity to launch new glass products. The glass tea sets sold very well, but the most popular was the jewelry, and each piece sold at a very high price. In the past year, Guaxian's treasure house had sold hundreds of pieces, and the profits were so great that it made people jealous. The merchants of the northern borderline also wanted to make this money, but they had no way to get such good things, and could only watch Guaxian make money. It could be said that in the past year, the glass had become the symbol of the status of the nobles in the northern borderline. Every family had at least one set, and they could not show their generosity at all. Which noblewoman did not wear 1 or 2 pieces of glass jewelry seemed to be too ashamed to go out and not dare to entertain guests. Among them, the most generous noblewoman was Wu Liba's wife. Her family ran a business, and her husband was a wise man, whom the king of the northern borderline relied heavily on. Every time the treasure house had a new product, she was always the first to get the news and contributed a lot of money. Among all the noble women of the northern borderline, she was the only one who had collected several sets of glass jewelry. Every time she went out to a banquet, she attracted the attention of most people. Full of heroic spirit. As the saying went, follow the example of your superiors. This saying was not only applicable in Dongqing, but also in the north borderline. Wu Liba's wife had a very high status in the circle of aristocratic ladies. They admired the colored glass of the heavenly palace. Naturally, those aristocratic ladies with slightly lower status also coveted them. However, they were not as wealthy as the other ladies. By the time they received news that the treasure house was stocking up, the items had already been bought. Things that couldn't be bought even if one had money could better reflect one's noble status. In order to satisfy the needs of these noble ladies, Gu Axan smiled bitterly and agreed to help them search. Only then did they give up. They waited, and waited, they waited anxiously, and finally, the news from the treasure house came. This was the largest in history. There were a total of 20 sets of colored glass of the heavenly palace jewelry that were in relatively perfect condition. This news caused waves of ripples in the circle of aristocratic ladies of the north borderline. The treasure house was filled with carriages and servants from various mansions. Wu Liba's wife was still the vanguard. She generously spent 670,000 strings of coins to buy 2 of the most gorgeous and beautiful jewelry sets. The other ladies wanted to fight for it, but they weighed their own family assets. No matter what, they couldn't compare to the family's business. Therefore, they could only settle for the next best thing, which was to buy other jewelry. The treasure house was very discerning and respectfully offered a set. It was sent to the imperial harem of the north borderline and given to the most honorable woman. The Empress was also very interesting. After receiving it, she dressed up and held a banquet to show off. For a time, from the top to the bottom, the aristocratic families of the north borderline valued the colored glass of the heavenly palace. The only fly in the ointment was that this thing was fragile. But thinking about it, even fine jade would shatter if it fell to the ground. The colored glass of the heavenly palace should also be a jade stone from the sky. It was normal for it to shatter accidentally. Under such a trend, many businessmen coveted this thing to the extreme. They wanted nothing more than to replace the treasure house. The colored glass of the heavenly palace, in the black market of the north borderline, was even more priceless. Doing business could easily earn millions of strings of coins. Who wouldn't be envious? Soon, their opportunity came. They used money to try to bribe the servants and stewards of the treasure house. After spending money and beauties, they finally relented after nearly a year. What? The head of a business in the north borderline trembled. The wine in his hand almost spilled. He said in surprise, the number of pieces of the colored glass of the heavenly palace unearthed in May County wasn't just over 200, but over 2,000. Most of them are in the hands of that old fox, Gu Axan. The steward of the treasure house, who had been instigated to defect, nodded, but immediately revealed a resentful expression. That Gu Axan has made a lot of money, but he's very greedy. He only cares about filling his own pockets and doesn't care about my old partner at all. This time, if it weren't for your kindness, I'm afraid that my family would have been ruined. The steward of the treasure house sighed with a bitter expression. The head of the business in the north borderline snickered in his heart. If he hadn't used a scheme to frame the steward's family, causing him to owe a huge debt, this fat fish probably wouldn't have taken the bait, and he wouldn't have been able to know such shocking news. This Gu Axan is really an old fox. The head of the business pretended to be surprised and asked, since he has so many goods, why does he keep hiding that he doesn't have any? The steward of the treasure house asked with a bitter smile, you're also a businessman. How can you not know that the rarer something is, the greater its value? The fewer things there are, the more people want it, and the higher the price they offer. Only then can the colored glass of the heavenly palace be sold at a good price. If they were all displayed at once, how could they sell so well? Gu Axian has used this method too many times, but there are still so many people rushing to give him money. Sigh. The steward of the treasure house sighed. The head of the business stroked his beard and smiled. Business is business. Speaking of businessmen, I quite admire Gu Axian. A businessman from Dongqing was able to gain a foothold in the north borderline and have been doing business for so many years. It's indeed worth learning from his methods. People in the same trade are enemies. Seeing Gu Axian make a lot of money, who wouldn't be envious? The head of the business thought for a while. If he had so many colored glass of the heavenly palace, he would probably sell them as soon as possible. How could he be like Gu Axian, patiently operating it and raising its value to the peak? Admittedly, Gu Axian didn't sell much, but he did earn a lot of money. However, it was a pity that Gu Axian did a good business and was good at managing his subordinates, but his ability to guard against thieves, tsk. Chapter 564. Look, didn't he smash a hole in the treasure house that was like an iron bucket and obtain information about the treasure house's lifeline? The treasure house manager's face was ashen. The head of the Northern Borderline Trading Company patted him on the shoulder and said, "Don't be discouraged, good days are still ahead. According to our previous discussion, you steal those colored glass of the heavenly palace and sell them to me at a discount of 30%. The money is yours." The treasure house manager was a little hesitant. I betrayed the shopkeeper this time. I'm afraid he can't tolerate me. Only 30%, the head of the trading company said. Gu Axian still has nearly 2,000 pieces of the colored glass of the heavenly palace. Do you know how huge a figure it is to sell all of them at 30%? Besides our trading company alliance, who can buy it all at once? The money you get will be far more than what Gu Axian earns. All of this money will be yours in the future. It's like a pie falling from the sky. If you take it all for yourself, you'll be as rich as a country in the future. The treasure house manager was tempted. A look of hesitation and greed flashed across his face. This made the head of the trading company very satisfied. After a while, the treasure house manager gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, I agree. But I don't think I'll be alive to enjoy so much money." The head of the trading company smiled and said, "I can lend you people to escort you safely out of the northern borderline. But you want to buy slaves and horses, that won't do." Recently, the higher-ups have been very strict with these two businesses. You can only sell to the people of the northern borderline, not even to people of other countries. The treasure house manager said, "Then, can I buy sheepskin?" The head of the trading company heard that Gu Axian often bought sheepskin from various families. He didn't buy a lot each time, but it added up to a huge amount. He pretended to be confused and said, "Sheepskin has a strong smell and can't be made into clothes. What business can I do with it?" The treasure house manager sneered and said, "Gu Axian sold those sheepskin at a high price to the people of Nanqing and the barbarians of the 4 factions of Nanman. With these sheepskin, he made a huge sum of money last winter. This kind of beast who makes money from national disasters is not worth working with." The head of the trading company raised his eyebrows and sneered. Business is business. As long as there is money to be made in business, who cares if it's national disasters? The treasure house manager was convinced by the head of the trading company and nodded with an ashen face. The head of the trading firm said, "Don't worry about the sheepskin, I'll make sure to arrange it for you. As for sheepskin, which family doesn't have hundreds of them? You can easily find tens of thousands of them. Set a time and I'll get them for you. You can have as many as you want." The northern borderline herded horses and sheep, and every household raised many cows, sheep, and horses. The sheep would grow their wool crazily in the winter, so the trimmed wool was useless. They would even complain that it smelled too bad when used to make fire. Now that someone was buying it, even if the price was very low, it was better than nothing. It could be considered as an extra income for the people of the northern borderline. In order to resist foreign businesses, the royal court of the northern borderline established various trading companies according to the advice of the wise man, and each trading company formed an alliance with each other. It was impossible to swallow Guxian's colored glass of the heavenly palace in one go with just one trading company, and they didn't have that much money either. Therefore, he had to unite the trading companies and buy this batch of goods together. The land of the northern borderline was not suitable for farming, but it was rich in minerals and produced all kinds of precious stones, gold, silver, jade, and spices. The value of these things was not even half of the value in Dongqing. In comparison, copper and iron were more valued than gold, silver, and jewelry. If they exchanged gold, silver, and jewelry for the colored glass of the heavenly palace, the trading company of the northern borderline would make a huge profit, and the final profit would be more than 9 times. In the face of such a huge temptation, it was better to do it sooner rather than later. Taking advantage of the opportunity when Guxian went to other countries to do business and was unable to take care of the northern borderline, the manager of the treasure house stole the colored glass of the heavenly palace in batches and sold it to the trading company of the northern borderline at a low price of 30%, in exchange for a large amount of gold, silver, jewelry, and sheepskin wool. The manager of the treasure house was also a scheming person, and he did things flawlessly. This made the head of the trading company sigh with emotion. As expected of a manager trained by Guxian, his style was just like him. It was a pity that when Guxian returned and saw the empty treasure house, he would vomit blood in anger. Thinking of that wonderful scene, the head of the trading company couldn't help but smile. In the end, the manager of the treasure house forged Guxian's warrant and dismissed the treasure house and its branch business in the northern borderline. He left the northern borderline with the old man of the treasure house, the gold, silver, jewelry, and hundreds of thousands of sheepskin wool, and headed in the direction of Nanxing country. Before leaving, the manager of the treasure house also secretly asked the head of the trading company if he could secretly sell some horses to him. The head of the trading company said, "Didn't I say before that the higher-ups are very strict with this business? Horses can't be sold." The manager of the treasure house said, "You also said that business is business. There is money to be made in this business, so why not do it?" The head of the trading company smiled and said nothing. The manager of the treasure house refused to give up and asked about the famous horses in the northern borderline. The head of the trading company was annoyed by the questions. He said, "If you want to buy horses, you can ask the horse merchants in Shalon country. They have just presented more than 10 Fergana horses to the imperial court. I heard that those horses are very expensive, even better than the best horses in the northern borderline. But it's a pity that along the way, 4 horses died of illness. Although the horses over there are expensive, they are indeed good horses." The manager of the treasure house asked in surprise, "What kind of place is Shalon country?" The head of the trading company said, "I don't know either, but that place is very far away. I heard that there are only spring and summer in a year, and it is very hot and dry. The people over there are all tan like charcoal. If it gets dark, you can't even see a person. Their brains are stupid, but their limbs are strong." The manager of the treasure house grunted and seemed to be a little tempted. The head of the trading company didn't mind connecting the 2 parties. The manager of the treasure house took the opportunity to see the Fergana horses from Shalon country. They were indeed extraordinary. "But, why, they don't look very energetic," the head of the trading company said with an indifferent expression. "I heard that they traveled for more than half a year. Even people can't stand it, let alone horses. They will be fine after resting for a while." If you want to buy horses, you can talk to the head of the trading company in Shalon country. If the price is right, he might sell you one. People also had problems with acclimatization, and horses were the same. They would be fine after resting for a while. It had always been like this, so the head of the trading company didn't care. The manager of the treasure house asked about the price and was scared off. The horses were good horses, but a top-grade Fergana horse cost 5 or 600,000 strings of coins. Who could afford it? Every year, the northern borderline would buy horses from Shalon country, not for people to ride, but to use the Fergana horses of Shalon country and the good warhorses of the local horse farms to breed high-quality warhorses. If that was the case, the price was actually not expensive. Seeing that the manager of the treasure house was scared off, the head of the trading company laughed secretly. Chapter 565. The manager of the treasure house hesitated. How many times could he see a horse of such high quality in his life? However, when he thought of the value of a Fergana horse as high as 5 to 600,000 strings of coins, he was scared off and shook his head like a rattle drum. This thing was too expensive, he couldn't afford it. It's not that I don't want to buy it, it's just that the price is really too expensive. It's not worth it, it's really not worth it. Seeing that he was so stingy, the head of the commercial firm despised him and laughed at the same time. Even if some people had money, they were at most just local tycoons. They didn't have great foresight and insight, and they didn't consider the big picture. Was a Fergana horse worth 5 to 600,000 strings of coins expensive? This price was indeed very expensive, but what if these Fergana horses were excellent stallions? Any horse farm that got such a high-quality Fergana horse could breed countless high-quality warhorses, and the value created in a few years would far exceed this price. The warhorses of the northern borderline were so sought after because of their persistent efforts to improve the horse's bloodline. With a large number of high-quality warhorses, the combat power of the northern borderline could improve so quickly. Therefore, in the eyes of the head of the commercial firm, the manager of the treasure house was really short-sighted and useless. With this judgment, the head of the commercial firm was more at ease with the manager of the treasure house. He was happy and blurted out, "I think you really like good horses. I have a few mixed-blood Fergana horses. Although they aren't as pure-blooded as Shalon, they've been carefully cultivated for 2 generations. They're of extremely good quality. Do you want to take a look? But I'll say this in advance. If you want to buy them, you can only buy one. Those good horses are all registered. If there are too few, it'll be hard to explain." The manager of the treasure house's heart trembled. Was he going to smuggle a fine horse to him? Of course, he had to agree to such a good thing. The northern borderline was vast and rich in high-quality horses. The imperial court kept a close eye on each horse farm. However, there would always be people who would take risks for the sake of profit. The horse that Lu Shi gave to Jiang Pingji was smuggled out. It was originally meant to be presented to the king of the northern borderline, but the officials under him intercepted it and sold it. The horse that they gave to the king was slightly inferior. Now that the situation was tense, good horses could not be bought and sold carelessly. Horses that could be bought and sold privately naturally had some tricks up their sleeves. For example, the owner of the horse farm would privately embezzle the money and report that the newborn foals had died from dystocia or had died prematurely. Then, he would raise them in private and sell them at a high price. The manager of the treasure house looked at the few fine horses that the head of the trading company was talking about. They were not very old, but one could already see their future glory. He swallowed nervously and obsessively. Compared to the Fergana horses, which had a thin head, a high neck, thin skin, fine hair, and appeared lean, the manager of the treasure house preferred the hybrid of the Fergana horses and the local horses of the northern borderline. It not only had the advantages of the Fergana horses, such as great strength, speed, and endurance, but it also had the advantages of the local horses, such as strong explosive power, strong weight-bearing, light footsteps, and strong physique. Which man wouldn't like it? The Fergana horses of Shalon were good in every way except for one thing, which was that they were slightly lean. However, after 2 generations of hybridization, the horses in front of him that had improved their bloodlines could be said to be real godly horses. The head of the trading company was very satisfied with the obsessive reaction of the manager of the treasure house. He said in a slightly proud tone, "Are you satisfied with what you see?" The manager of the treasure house nodded like pounding garlic and said obsequiously, "I'm satisfied, I can't be more satisfied. I've never seen such a handsome horse in my life. I really have to thank you this time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the luck to see such a magnificent horse." The head of the trading company was very satisfied. He said, "If you like it, you can pick anyone. We're old friends, so I'll give you the best price." The manager of the treasure house didn't know much about horses, but he knew that if the dozen or so horses in front of him were not good, the head of the trading company wouldn't have valued them so much. Therefore, he didn't have to worry about the quality of the fine horses. He only needed to pick the best-looking one. Yes, he was a beauty lover. The color of these fine horses was very pure. Among a group of brown, brownish-red, brownish-yellow, and pure black horses, the manager of the treasure house saw the snow-white horse at first glance. There was not a trace of other colors on its body, and it had a light body and vigorous gait. It was a beauty among horses. What a beautiful little girl. I'll choose this one. The manager of the treasure house raised his hand and touched the mane of the horse. The horse snorted but didn't reject it. Its temperament was very docile. The head of the trading company was strangely silent for a moment. "This is a male." The manager of the treasure house, "A male?" He was surprised and asked, "Has this horse been gelded?" The head of the trading company said, "This horse hasn't been gelded yet." What was gelding? To put it bluntly, it was castration. Male warhorses were all castrated. They were the so-called geldings. These male horses were more docile and easy to tame. They also wouldn't go into estrus. After all, anything could happen on the battlefield. If a male horse went into estrus, who would be able to tame it? The horses used for riding were all gelded. Each horse farm would keep the best quality male horses as stud horses to breed excellent offspring. The expression of the manager of the treasure house became even more strange. He couldn't help but look at the horse. A gelding that hadn't been gelded could have such a good temper. The other party seemed to grin and laugh at his lack of knowledge. The head of the trading company said without hesitation, "This horse hasn't been gelded. Its temperament is volatile and it's not easy to tame. Do you want to change to another one?" The manager of the treasure house shook his head and said, "I like the color white. It's the only one here that's white, and it's so beautiful. I'll choose it." "Oh, as long as you like it." The manager of the treasure house left with the big white horse. The money was directly deducted from the smuggled, colored glass of the heavenly palace. At the end of September, the sky rained. The dry land in the north finally had rain to moisten it. On the day it rained, Dian Yen, the rough man, rushed to the government office with a face full of ecstasy to report the good news. My lord, it's raining. It's finally raining." Jiang Pingji raised her eyelids and put down the brush and ink in her hand. She got up and picked up the cloak beside her to put it on. "It's raining. Why are you so surprised?" Even so, Jiang Pingji's words still carried a faint smile. In this era, the heavens depended on what people ate. In the past, artificial rain could still be made, but now it couldn't. The autumn harvest was getting closer and closer, but the weather showed no signs of improving. The dug canals were gradually drying up. The people's hearts were wavering. Jiang Pingji was worried about how to appease the people, but she didn't expect the heavens to give her face. It started to rain without warning. At first, it was drizzling. Then it became raindrops the size of beans, falling with a pitter-patter. The people of Fengyi County were ecstatic. Every household took out their pots and pans to collect the water. The farmers who were worried about their fields were overjoyed. They shouted and rushed into the rain, laughing loudly. Chapter 566. The precious rain lasted for 2 days and 2 nights. It was not until the morning of the 3rd day that the rain gradually subsided. When the golden morning light pierced through the misty morning mist, the air was suffused with the fragrance of water vapor and soil. Seeing this, Jiang Pingji gradually felt relieved. Just in case, she brought Zhang Ping and the craftsmen of the carpentry workshop to inspect the canals and reservoirs. Only after making sure that the water was flowing smoothly did she feel slightly relieved. If there was a flood after the drought, it would be impossible to live on. The dried-up mountain stream had the sound of flowing water again. The leaves that had withered for a whole summer stretched their limbs and gradually regained their vitality. The rain has stopped, the pond in the courtyard was filled with clean and clear water again. Under Takshu's instructions, the maidservant released a few goldfish that were kept in the water tank and added some water plants. The maidservant, who had a slender waist and a delicate appearance, also had a joyful expression on her face. She looked innocent. After the rain, the weather gradually cooled down. The air also faded away from the previous stuffiness and heat. Taking a deep breath, the spleen and lungs also became a little more moist. Jiang Pingji changed into the new autumn clothes made by the maidservant. The material was slightly thicker than the fabric worn in the summer. Due to the influence of the integration of force, the genes of this body had been improved. At the age of 17, she was already taller than some adult men. If converted to the unit of length that the audience in the streaming room was used to, she was about 1.75 meters. Looking at this growth, it was estimated that she could grow a few more centimeters. In terms of the average height of men and women in this era, her height was quite rare. Lang Jun, you're awake. Takshu was the first to notice her gaze. She smiled and bowed to greet her. The other maidservants bowed one after another. A beautiful young girl and a gentleman in the streaming room were cheering. Jiang Pingji's mood also became a lot better. Yes. She nodded and said, I'm going to the government office. Rainwater hung on the branches and dripped down. Feng Jin, who had been worried about the drought, was also refreshed at this moment. Good morning, my lord. Feng Jin greeted her. After getting a reply, he continued with the matter at hand. Jiang Pingji flipped through the bamboo slips on her table and asked, Shihing still hasn't come to the government office today. Feng Jin asked, My lord, why are you looking for him? Zhang Ping was not good at government affairs, and he was also obsessed with all kinds of woodworking. He might not even come to the government office to take a roll call every 10 days or half a month. If he went to the carpentry workshop to arrest people, Zhang Ping would definitely be there. Jiang Pingji said, the rain was frighteningly heavy 2 days ago. I'm afraid there will be a flood. I plan to bring Shihing along to take a look. Many floods did not accumulate water because of heavy rain. Instead, it was because the drainage system under the city was not good enough and could not divert the water in time, resulting in excessive water accumulating in one place. When Jiang Pingji rebuilt Xiangyang district, she also considered the construction of the sewers. However, Xiangyang district was not big and the construction of the sewers was not complicated. When Xiangyang district was completed, the sewers were also completed. The rain 2 days ago was frighteningly heavy. She thought that Xiangyang district would be flooded. Fortunately, both the old and new sewer drainage systems were powerful. In addition to the few canals built before summer, the water flow was stabilized. Even the farmlands were not affected. He could not help but recall the scene 2 days ago when Jiang Pingji wore a straw raincoat and brought people to patrol. His heart warmed slightly. My lord sympathizes with the people. You are very kind. The two of them had not spoken much when the otaku handicraft expert, Zhang Ping, came over. He was dressed in brown and wore a bamboo hat on his head. He looked very down to earth. Where did he have the demeanor of a famous scholar? Jiang Pingji put down what she was doing and went out with Zhang Ping. The sewers of this era were very different from the sewers that the viewers in the streaming room knew. The modern sewers were more like underground passageways that discharged the city's domestic sewage and rainstorms and floods. However, for the manpower of this era, the amount of work required was huge and there were many drawbacks. Whoever built such as sewers would be a fool. Why did she say so? Firstly, the price-performance ratio was too low. The materials from ancient times could not satisfy such a difficult construction structure. Even if it could be built, the final cost of labor and materials would be too high. It was not realistic at all. Therefore, Jiang Pingji did not consider this at all. Secondly, the form of war in this era also determined that the sewers were not realistic. If the enemy sneaked into the city through the sewers and caught the defending general unprepared, who would be to blame then? This was no longer a trap. It was a trap for the people of the entire city. In fact, the so-called sewers were just ditches that covered the entire city. The drainage capacity was rather poor. During the rainy season, water would often accumulate. If it was even worse, it would be a torrential flood that would drown the entire city. After Jiang Pingji set up the brick kiln, she specially ordered the craftsmen to bake hollow pipes with a thick diameter. Every hollow pipe in the shape of a long tube could be inlaid with each other. The inspiration came from the mortise and tenon of house beams. Then, she ordered people to dig ditches in the main streets of Xiangyang district. Finally, the fired hollow pipes were buried in them. They were connected in series and connected to the drainage outlet. Such drainage pipes could be found all over Xiangyang district. If there was such a heavy rain in the past, Xiangyang district would have been knee-deep in the water. It was very different today. The roads were still fine. The two of them found a tea house and sat down. Jiang Pingji thought of the urgent letter she received yesterday. She couldn't help but laugh. I've already asked the other 3 districts to gather local materials and bake these hollow pipes. When it's really completed, the people of the 3 districts won't have to worry about their houses being flooded when they sleep. Apart from Xiangyang district, Jiaoping district, Maolin district and Qingan district were all drenched by the heavy rain. The water was knee-deep. Fortunately, the rain didn't last for too long. It would subside in another half a day. Zhang Ping said, "My lord, you've thought it through. It's better not to delay this matter. This summer, it hasn't rained at all. Now there's only a rainstorm. This is already very good. If it was in previous years, when the rain was abundant, I'm afraid Fengyi County would be flooded and the fields would suffer." Ever since he started working for Jiang Pingji, Zhang Ping never had a day to rest. However, he enjoyed it. He never thought that the Mahist craftsman's tricks could play such a big role. If they could specialize in this area and let the Mahist techniques permeate every aspect of the people's lives, their final status would not be any lower than that of the Confucians. In order to get through the rainy season next year, the drainage system must be done well. The drainage pipes weren't for war, but they were related to the people's quality of life. Naturally, Jiang Pingji attached great importance to them. The two of them talked in low voices. The people in the tea house also subconsciously kept their voices down. They didn't dare to disturb them. Because Jiang Pingji often appeared on the streets and alleys, she didn't put on the airs of a district magistrate. When she was bored, she would even help the older farmers with their farm work. There wasn't anyone in Xiangyang district who didn't know her. It was normal for her to bring her subordinates to go shopping and discuss political affairs. Chapter 567. The government office is flooded. The rain is too heavy. Yang Si tied a knot at the hem of his shirt, revealing his two bare calves soaking in the water. He moved the bamboo slips and documents to the cabinet for a long time. He was so tired that he was panting and could not straighten his back. Wei Ci sat on the two stacked tables and looked at him with a smile. Jing Rong, you eat and drink all day without doing any work. Are you suffering now? Look at how many bamboo slips you've moved, but you're so tired that you can't straighten your back. This won't do. Yang Si was so tired that his forehead was sweating. Unfortunately, Wei Ci was still making sarcastic remarks. He could not help but glare at him fiercely. Don't be so arrogant, you fox. When this matter is over, I'll go far away and never see you again, you black-hearted fox. Yang Si and the boy servant panted as they moved the bamboo slips. Wei Ci sat on the table to avoid the water. What was this? Unfortunately, Wei Ci was weak. If he was asked to do the hard work, he might fall into the water. Wei Ci lifted his sleeves to cover his lips and smiled. You can say this if you can walk away. He had boarded Her Majesty's pirate ship and still wanted to leave. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Yang Si's anger rose. He regretted coming to Qingan district for the umpteenth time. If he had known earlier, he would have stayed under Prince Changshu's tent. It was not worth it to sell himself to Jiang Pingji, Shou Bapi, just for a few meals. You fox, if you don't restrain your nature, others will be so scared that they won't dare to come over. Yang Si knew that Wei Ci had sent letters to many of his good friends with the intention of recruiting them. But this was a trap. Once he jumped in, he could not get out. Wei Ci blinked and said innocently, Jing Rong, you don't have to worry about this. Looking at the time, the fat fish may have taken the bait. Yang Si was strangely silent for a while and asked, You mean the fat fish? So the friends that Wei Ci made were fat fish that could be tricked in his eyes. Wei Zhixiao, doesn't your conscience hurt? What made his heart hurt was that he seemed to be one of the fat fish in Wei Ci's eyes. If he had not walked right into the trap, he might have received a recruitment letter from Wei Ci. Thinking of that scene, Yang Si felt that he was about to have a mental breakdown. He wished that he could throw Wei Ci into the water. You damned fox, see if I don't crush you to death today. I'm enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. Yang Si rolled up his sleeves and looked like he was going to fight Wei Ci to the death. Watching the two teachers bickering and fooling around, the errand boy felt extremely tired. When it came to hard work, his master had only helped a little. The heaviest work still fell on him. The drainage pipes in Qingan district had not been paved yet. The previous drainage ditches were broken and old. After 2 days of heavy rain, the entire city had turned into a vast ocean. Fortunately, the water was not deep. Yang Si led the people to drain the water urgently. By noon, the water in the city had basically been emptied. The situation in the other two counties was worse than Qingan district, but compared to before, the situation had improved a lot. This heavy rain alleviated the drought in the north. The dry and cracked farmland was soaked in a layer of water. The dry and hard soil also turned into soft silt. Yang Si and the others began to get busy. On one hand, they had to keep an eye on the construction of the houses in the city. On the other hand, they had to keep an eye on the burning of the hollow pipes. After the burning was done, they had to lead people to dig the ditches, drain the water in the ground, dry it, and then bury the hollow pipes. Because Chingon district was this year's experimental county for farming, the number of wastelands reclaimed was huge. The people still needed to work day and night. In addition to these trivial matters, they had to handle the resettlement of the refugees, the distribution of wastelands, the registration of personnel, the provision of porridge. All the trivial matters had to be handled. I really hate that I didn't give me more hands when I was born. These days, young C was so busy that his eye sockets were sunken, his eye bags were dark, and his eyes were bloodshot. Even if the government office specially assigned a private chef for him, he could not be happy, because he was so damn tired that he did not even have time to eat. Wasn't this a trap? Young C said shakily, I'm going to write a letter and tell them, this is a trap, don't walk right into it. The originally calm and composed strategist was now as aggrieved as a child. Wei Ci smiled and said, that's not right. The more people there are, the less work to be shared. If no one came, wouldn't he be the one who would be tired? Young C looked like he had nothing to live for. The thing I regret the most in this life is getting to know you. If there's a next life, remember to stay far away. Wei Ci smiled faintly and said mischievously, it's useless for me to stay far away. The main point is to avoid the Lord. Thinking about his previous life, in order not to be a burden to Yang Si, the two of them had little contact in private. Did that mean that Yang Si did less work? He was still so tired that he wanted to go on strike every day. Her Majesty was too ambitious and had too many things to do. She looked like she could not wait to finish the things that would take thousands of years in a few decades. Her Majesty was busy day and night. Which of the officials under her did not keep up with her bitterly? If they wanted to be free in their next life, they had to first open their eyes wide to see clearly where Her Majesty was and avoid her. Only then could they be free. Yang Si was so choked that he could not breathe. After a while, he muttered, "Who do you think that fat fish is? Do I know him?" Everyone's circle of friends was different. Wei Ci's friends might not be Yang Ci's friends. Wei Ci said, "You may have heard of this person. His name is Feng Zhen. His courtesy name is Zhi. He is from Zhangzhou's Anshan County." Zhangzhou's Anshan County. Wasn't that Prince Changshuo's fief? According to Prince Changshuo's previous role as a virtuous king, there was no reason for him to let a talent slip away from his hands. Zhangzhou's Anshan County. That place is very far from here. It takes at least half a year for your letters to come and go. How did you get a reply so quickly? Yang Si frowned. I have heard of this Feng Zhi. His character is not very good. The key was that this Feng Zhen also seemed to be a sickly person. Unlike Wei Ci's weak body that was acquired, Feng Zhen's weak body was brought out from his mother's womb. Two sickly people gathered together. Were they trying to kill him, Yang Si? Wei Ci said, Zhi is a carefree person. He always likes to say, happiness should be enjoyed in time, how can it be delayed? His body is not good and he was born weak. It's not bad to have such a carefree personality. It's much better than being depressed in his heart and being young. Yang Si raised his eyebrows. It seemed like Wei Ci was also a person who liked to be stubborn and depressed all day long. Did he have the cheek to say this? Hearing you say this, I'm a little interested. Wei Ci was silent for a while and looked at Yang Si with pity. This kind of interest was not good. If not for Feng Zhen's ability, Wei Ci would not have been able to write letters to his friends in Zhongzhou. He really did not want to recruit Feng Zhen. One Her Majesty was hard enough to serve. Now that there was Feng Zhen, his days would really be chaotic. To put it nicely, Fengzhen's temperament was carefree. To put it bluntly, he was unrestrained. The Fengzhen that Wei Ci knew in his past life could be described with one word: unrestrained. Because doctors always said that Fengzhen's body was weak and that he would not live long, Fengzhen felt that life was short and that he had to enjoy himself. So this person courted death in all kinds of ways. He ate hanshi powder like it was rice. He slept with women every night and drank until he was unconscious. He was proficient in eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling. He thought about how to court death all day long and how to court death. He greatly damaged the atmosphere of the group under Her Majesty. What was the result? In his past life, Wei Ci had knelt down and Fengzhen was still alive and kicking. Chapter 568. My lord, Ping feels a little strange. Jiang Pingji smiled as she took a pair of chopsticks and asked him, "What's strange?" She brought Zhang Ping to inspect all the drainage points in Xiangyang district and found that the drainage pipes were operating normally. Coincidentally, the scorching sun was high above their heads and their stomachs were empty. Jiang Pingji and Zhang Ping found a table in a restaurant and planned to order a few dishes to make up for a meal. Coincidentally, the restaurant was opened by the government and was named Greeting Guests House. She looked around. The restaurant's decoration was simple and elegant. The environment was quiet and secluded. It was indeed a good place to eat. Yes, Wei Ci did a good job in this area. Not long after they sat down, the curtain of the small room was lifted and a waiter with a broken palm came in. The waiter looked at Jiang Pingji and Zhang Ping in astonishment. He was stunned for a while before he knelt down heavily. "Your humble servant greets you, my lord." The restaurant was opened by the government. The employees were either injured retired soldiers or the families of soldiers who died in battle. The waiter in front of them was a soldier who retired due to disability. He found a position as a waiter in the restaurant. Although he was a waiter, he was a veteran who had been to the battlefield. He could also be a hired thug. His monthly salary was enough to support a family of 3. Until now, the veteran still insisted on the habit of daily morning training. Although he was disabled, he was in good spirits. Jiang Pingji said, "Get up. Shihing and I are just here for a meal. Don't be so formal." The waiter got up obediently, but he was still somewhat restrained. Jiang Pingji took a roll of bamboo slips. It was the menu of the restaurant. The ideas provided by the viewers in the streaming room were written on each bamboo slip. They were categorized and looked very novel. Jiang Pingji looked at the names of the dishes and ordered 2, 3 vegetarian dishes and 2 meat dishes. She then passed the menu to Zhang Ping. She took the opportunity to ask some questions. Basically, she asked about the veteran's life after he was disabled and retired. The veteran slowly let go of his courage and was not so restrained. She asked a question and the veteran answered it honestly. "Your humble servant's life is not bad, my lord. A few months ago, Iceman made a matchmaker and married a wife. She is now 3 months pregnant. The work in the restaurant is not heavy. I come to clean at dawn every day and prepare to open the restaurant. I close at dusk. I get 2 salaries every month. My family eats, wears, and has a lot of money left every month. My wife is also hardworking. She knits a sweater at home." Jiang Pingji asked in detail, and the veteran had a lot to say. His face was flushed with excitement, and there was no hint of gloom. Zhang Ping silently looked through the menu 17 to 18 times, buying time for his lord. Hard Cuban, work starts at 5:00 in the morning and closes at 9:00 in the evening. Forget it, that means work starts at 5:00 in the morning and closes at 9:00 at night. Would it be too tiring? Now that he had lost his left hand, would it be inconvenient for him to live? If this was the modern era, he might still be able to reattach his hand, but in ancient times. Sigh, he would be crippled for life. Strive for next month, listen carefully to their conversation. This veteran can receive 3 years of disability compensation. That's quite a lot. He's working as a waiter and a bodyguard, earning 2 people's wages. His life should be pretty good, right? After watching the live stream for a long time, the audience more or less understood Jiang Pingji's situation. The veteran's life was not bad. Midnight Xiuxian, by the way, why do they have to give the disability allowance for 3 years? Can't they just give it all at once? Wu Yu Qingxian, according to my analysis, there are probably 2 reasons. If they give it all at once, the burden on the streamer will be huge. After all, it's not a single soldier's death or injury. Secondly, if they don't restrain themselves and spend it all, what will they do in the future? I think the 3-year allowance is to give the veteran some buffer time. In 3 years, if they are patient, they can learn a trade to make a living. When the time comes, they can still support themselves without the allowance. Although the audience in the live stream did not all guess correctly, it was not far from Jiang Pingji's intention. The veteran was hardworking, and the wife he married was also capable. There was still hope for the family's life. Jiang Pingji nodded, and Jiang Ping tactfully handed the menu back to the veteran. After the veteran left, Jiang Ping said, "Business at the guest house is not bad. The food in the restaurant was delicious, and it was always full of guests at mealtimes. Even though the price was 4 to 5 times more expensive than ordinary restaurants, there were still people who came to support them. Of course, the people did not have the money to eat there often, but they could afford to eat there occasionally." Jiang Pingji said, "When the business of the restaurant stabilizes, I plan to let the chef teach the recipes of ordinary dishes to other restaurants in the county." Jiang Ping was stunned and did not react for a moment. Why did the Lord suddenly say this? Jiang Pingji said, "The officials don't compete with the people, and the people can't afford to compete. The business of the guest house is good enough. If it continues to grow, it will definitely suppress the restaurants of other people, which goes against my original intention. Let the chef publicize the recipes of ordinary dishes, and the people can also eat cheap and delicious food. The guest house will continue to take the more expensive route, and the two will not interfere with each other." Jiang Pingji thought for a long time about the name of the restaurant. In the end, she accepted the audience's suggestion and named it Guest House. To put it bluntly, it was a problem of the customer base. The restaurant of the common people served the common people, and a meal did not cost much. The dishes made by the guest house were more expensive, and they served customers with financial ability. They took the middle and high-end route, and tried to separate the customer base of the two. Jiang Pingji was not short of money. She could afford to subsidize the disabled soldiers, but there was no need to steal the business of the common people. Jiang Ping understood and could not help but feel emotional. When she was unreliable, his lord was really unreliable. But when the lord was reliable, a wise ruler was nothing more than that. How many high-ranking people took the people's money in an unsightly manner? Only his lord could see it clearly, and she did it flawlessly. While the two were talking, a frightening cough came from the restaurant next door. Jiang Ping suddenly thought of something and said, "My lord." Jiang Ping remembered what was wrong. There were coughs along the way. He did not know when it started, but Jiang Ping could always hear the coughs. Who was he muttering about before? Why did he come out to wander around when he was so sick? Now. His expression turned serious, and he raised his hand to pull out the short dagger from his waist. He looked dangerously in the direction of the coughs. They were being followed all the way. Jiang Pingji smiled and waved her hand at him. "Put it away, it's just a meal. Zhang Ping was an introverted scholar with mediocre martial arts skills, but Jiang Pingji was not. She knew long ago that someone was following them. Zhang Ping was surprised, and he sheathed the dagger before the waiter served the dishes. "My lord, you knew long ago?" Zhang Ping asked. "What else?" Jiang Pingji smiled and turned her body to make it convenient for the waiter to set up the table. "Who doesn't know this face in Xiangyang district? I'm not popular either. What if someone finds me an eyesore and tries to harm me when I'm alone? If your lord did not have this little bit of vigilance, how would she dare to bring a weakling around the district? Let's eat, we'll meet the person next door after we're full." As soon as she finished speaking, the coughs became more intense. Chapter 569. Yan Rian, ha 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 ha, I feel like Zhang Ping is hurt. The streamer's words are a critical hit. Sophie Tang Tang, cough, cough, cough. Although I also want to laugh, I don't think Zhang Ping understands what Zhang Ping means, does he? Vegetarian number, I hope he doesn't understand. He'll be sad if he does. Speaking of which, who isn't Zhang Ping in front of the streamer? Xiao Santian, ha ha ha, slapped the table. My friend above, your words are too hurtful. Zhang Ping smiled sheepishly. His martial arts skills were indeed lacking. He had no problem dealing with ordinary people, but if he encountered a ruthless character who was difficult to deal with, a salted fish like him could only lie on the ground and cheer for his lord. He could only sit and watch as his lord fought them all. My lord, why is he following us? Zhang Ping did not discover the whereabouts of that person. Apart from being too focused on his work, another reason was that he could not sense the person's malice. Jiang Pingji said, I don't know either, but he is indeed an interesting person. Zhang Ping was surprised. Seeing that his lord had some interest on her face, he was a little more curious about the guest he had never met before. The other party coughed for a long time and finally calmed down. However, Jiang Pingji knew that the person was still next door and was leisurely enjoying his lunch. Her appetite was much larger than that of a normal man. She ate several times more food every meal. Zhang Ping was very surprised every time. His lord didn't look sturdy, so where exactly did she put all the food? After eating and drinking to their heart's content, the conversation between the waiter and the strange man could be heard from outside the dining room. Jiang Pingji said, let him in. After a while, the curtain of the dining room was lifted and a man wearing old gray clothes walked in. The man was about 27 or 28 years old. His figure was thin, and the loose, old-fashioned clothes he wore made him look even thinner. There was not much flesh on his cheeks. His chin was slightly sharp. His thin lips were abnormally light green and his face was paler than normal people. If it was not for his clear features and temperament, he might have been mistaken for an old hooligan who was addicted to wine and women. When the person appeared, the audience in the streaming room became lively. Hard Cuban, this person's image is really good. He gives off the feeling of a sick and weak wastrel. A decadent beauty. Dongfang Yaoya, host, are you trying to summon a dragon with all kinds of handsome men? The elegant man, his wife Wei Zixiao, the gentle and dignified Feng Huayu, the adorable Li Hanmei, the foodie Yang Jingrong, the virtuous and naggy Su Xiaoyu, the mature and gloomy Qiguan Wenjing. Whoa! Now, there was an unknown, sickly, dissolute, and good-looking young man. This live stream room was so good-looking. Tang Xiaoyao is also me, ha ha ha, there's nothing wrong with these descriptions. But what the hell is Yang Jingrong, a foodie and stupid person? Be careful of Yang Si looking for you to have a heart-to-heart talk in the middle of the night. Yang Si's description to Beauty Wei Ci was clearly, overthinking, sinister, and good at using poisonous tricks. Shuxian Taishuang, if Prince Charming Yangxi really wants to settle accounts in the middle of the night, remember to inform him to come to my bed. The bed is already warmed. Jiang Pingji glanced at the newcomer. He didn't stand on ceremony at all. He shamelessly found a seat near Jiang Pingji and sat down. She suddenly said, if you don't want to die young, with no one to take care of the orphans, it's better to stop using hanshi powder. That person looked at Jiang Pingji. Zhang Ping also looked at the unfamiliar man in astonishment. You've been consuming hanshi powder for at least 4 years. If this continues, you'll have to report to the King of Hell. Recently, you've been consuming hanshi powder. The interval between each use is getting shorter and shorter. If you don't make up your mind to quit, you can even consider which tomb to be buried in after you die. Have you experienced the feeling of your addiction acting up? If it acts up and you can't buy hanshi powder, do you think you have the willpower not to beg others? She asked with a natural expression. I can see that you're quite an arrogant person. You probably don't want others to see you at your most pathetic state. The young man originally had a disdainful smile on his face. The more he listened, the worse his expression became. His dark eyes carried a stern look. Zhang Ping was dumbfounded as he listened. Jiang Pingji said to herself, forget it, I think you're not suitable. The young man was astonished. He didn't say anything. The indignation and anger in his heart rose again. What do you mean by this? Jiang Pingji said bluntly, although you didn't say anything, when you came in, I already knew everything. You observed me and Shiheng along the way, did you really think I didn't notice? I think you're probably a talent that Zixiao wrote a letter to recruit. You're observing me to see if I'm suitable. However, a wise man can choose his master. Conversely, a master can also choose a wise man. When you came in, I already felt you're not suitable. Zhang Ping was astonished. He really wanted to step forward and cover his lord's mouth. If the young man was really recommended by Wei Xi, he must be a great talent. His lord couldn't court disaster like this. The young man saw Zhang Ping's conflicted expression. His mood became slightly better, but he continued to speak harshly. Such a foolish person is the wise lord that Wei Zixiao thinks highly of. He was ridiculed without understanding him. It made him extremely unhappy. The world is full of talents. There's no shortage of troublemakers. With this body of yours, how many years can you serve me? Jiang Pingji returned with the same harsh sarcasm. Think about it carefully. Between the 2 times you consumed the powder, how long can your mind be clear? A clear mind is an essential requirement for a strategist. The young man was addicted to the powder. Jiang Pingji really didn't dare to use it casually. Talents are talents, but not all talents can be used. The young man was silent for a moment. He carefully recalled Jiang Pingji's previous words. Only then did he realize that she wasn't speaking without thinking. Zixiao told you. He had been consuming hanshi powder for some years, but his social circle was very small. It was impossible for Lu Shi to know unless Wei Xi was a busybody. Jiang Pingji replied honestly, no, Zixiao didn't say anything. He didn't even tell me who he wrote the letter to. The young man was interested and deliberately made things difficult for her. I think I have the ability to rule over the world. You chased me away just like that. Aren't you afraid that I'll bear a grudge? Although Fingyi County is one of the few fertile lands in the north, the terrain isn't good. It's easy to attack and hard to defend. If I'm determined to take revenge, it's not like I don't have the ability. Jiang Pingji didn't even lift her eyelids. She mocked back, continued to consume the powder. If your body can live to that age, consider it my loss. The corner of the young man's mouth twitched. He almost couldn't hold it in. There's actually someone who has a worse mouth than me in this world. Zhang Ping was afraid that the young man would leave in a huff. However, the young man didn't leave angrily. He even mocked his lord. Every word was harsh. There was a sense of déjà vu that they were evenly matched. The talents of this generation, he really couldn't understand them. The audience in the streaming room couldn't understand them either. The previous Yang Si and the current Feng Zhen, were they all masochists? If they were strategists, they would have slammed the table and left long ago when they met the streamer who had a bad mouth and a bad temper. The young man's surname was Feng and his given name was Zhen. He was from Zhangzhou's Anshan County. Chapter 570. Jiang Pingji said, "Think back to the feeling of Hanshi powder acting up. Can you touch your conscience and tell me there's no harm?" Feng Zhen's face froze. Just like what Jiang Pingji said before, it's been almost 4.5 years since the first time he consumed Hanshi powder. In the beginning, he only consumed it once every 1 or 2 months, occasionally to liven up his mood. In recent years, he consumed it once every half a month, until now, once every 7 to 8 days. Every time he consumed it, his mind would become more cheerful, his physical strength would become stronger, his entire body would feel light and his mind would feel extremely comfortable. Once the addiction of the powder hits him, if he didn't consume Hanshi powder in time, his bones would feel like they were being bitten by thousands of insects and ants. It would be unbearable. However, he still had some integrity, his dependence on Hanshi powder wasn't very serious. If it was someone else who consumed Hanshi powder intermittently for 4.5 years, he would probably have lost his mind, indulging in sensual pleasures, headaches and suffocation, restlessness and madness every day. However, based on his current situation, if he continued to consume Hanshi powder, the intervals between consumption would get shorter and shorter, his life would be in danger. Jiang Pingjit shook her head and said, "You've also noticed, from the time you started consuming Hanshi powder till now, the intervals between consumption are getting shorter and shorter. If you don't consume it on time, your bones will feel like they are being bitten by thousands of insects and ants, that excruciating pain. Can you endure it?" This was a vicious cycle. If he didn't quit Hanshi powder, his dependence on Hanshi powder would get stronger and stronger, the intervals between consumption would get shorter, the amount of time his mind could stay awake would decrease. After the cycle of nausea, it would be a dead end. Feng Zhen couldn't refute. However, to quit Hanshi powder, he had to endure the process of the addiction acting up. It was easier said than done. Feng Zhen had the same thinking as many gentry. His family was rich and didn't lack Hanshi powder. If the addiction acted up, he could just consume it. Why torture himself? He thought of the pain when the addiction acted up. He shook his head like a rattledrum. No way, no way. The addiction would make one want to die. Why bother to quit? Happiness should come in time. Why wait for it? Life is only 30 to 50 years. Life is short. It's enough to enjoy. Why torture yourself? When the audience in the streaming room heard their conversation, they then clearly realized that the weak and dissolute guy in front of them was an addict. Tian Shu Shiji, this guy is amazing. He's still alive after consuming Hanshi powder for more than 4 years. He's really lucky. Jiao Jiao, AI, isn't it good to be alive? Why don't you want to live? Mother's Day the day after tomorrow, I'm scratching the wall. Why do I feel that what this young man said makes sense? Oh no, my 3 views have been turned upside down. Although Hanshi powder wasn't a drug, but if one took too much of it, they would become addicted and their entire life would be ruined. Don't forget to the previous commenter who is making a fuss over nothing, I'm sure you haven't been following the streamer's live stream for a long time. The Hanshi powder has appeared a long time ago. It seems to be somewhat similar to the Wei and Jin dynasties in China. The aristocratic families were very fond of this thing. Did they really not know that Hanshi powder was harmful? Not necessarily. Just like what Fengjin had thought, many people knew that once one got addicted to hanshi powder, it would be extremely painful to quit. But it wasn't as if they couldn't afford to buy hanshi powder. When they felt uncomfortable, they could just take the powder. Why torment themselves and endure the pain of quitting the powder? In this day and age, beauty is one of the important conditions to become an official, to walk towards the pinnacle of life and to marry a fair, rich and beautiful woman. After consuming the hanshi powder, one's senses will feel comfortable and it can also make one feel refreshed, with a rosy complexion, fair skin and beautiful appearance. To them, this is a good thing. Hence, there were many admirers. Fengjin naturally didn't consume hanshi powder for his beauty, he purely wanted to enjoy and have fun. Since he didn't have a long life, he wouldn't waste it if he tried everything at least once. Now that Jiang Pingji advised him to quit using hanshi powder, Fengjin expressed that it was impossible, he wouldn't quit even if he died. Jiang Pingji also expressed that she wouldn't accept people who were not clear-headed. Zhang Ping sighed as he watched from the side. His lord was courting death, yet she didn't make him leave in anger. It could be seen that Fengjin was also a masochist. Fengjin also felt strange. It was fine as long as he was useful, why did she have to interfere in his private affairs? Although the wise lord that Wei Ci had acknowledged had the appearance of a wise ruler, his character was not pleasing to the eye. Fengjin asked her sarcastically, there are many people who are after hanshi powder. Are you going to persuade everyone you meet to quit using hanshi powder? Be careful that no one will be available in the future. At such a young age, he's a busybody. Jiang Pingji was astonished. How can that be? Not everyone has the qualifications for me to persuade them. If he's addicted to hanshi powder, if he doesn't make up his mind to quit, I'll never use such a useless person. Who knows when his addiction will kick in and he'll delay my work. The world is so big, there will always be people who are clean and clear-headed. Why should I waste my energy on such a useless person? Fengjin didn't know if he should feel honored or angry. Such a lord would be done for. If she didn't finish, he would read the 2 words, Fengjin, upside down. You've eaten the dishes from the guest house. How do you like the taste? Jiang Pingji asked him. Fengjin said, the delicacies of the world. I didn't know that there were so many different types of dishes. Jiang Pingji said coldly, when you die, you won't be able to eat the delicacies anymore. They'll all be on other people's tables. Fengjin was speechless. She asked, you like to sleep with women and get drunk until the sun rises? Fengjin smiled and said, the way of saints is to eat and lust. So what if I like it? He knew that he didn't have long to live. After his wife died, he didn't remarry or take a concubine. He slept with women and lived a carefree life. When you die, the beauty will be in someone else's arms and the wine will be in someone else's cup. Fengjin was speechless. Jiang Pingji asked again, you're also good at gambling. Fengjin held it in and said, why can't I gamble a little? Jiang Pingji sighed and said, when you die, the family business that hasn't been squandered yet will belong to someone else. Fengjin was speechless. You have a son who's not more than 5 years old. Do you have mean relatives in your family? Fengjin was astonished. He didn't know how she knew all this. He replied, so what if I do? When you die, your relatives will use your inheritance to bully your son. Don't you think that's pitiful? Fengjin couldn't bear it anymore. His mind was filled with, when you die, when he really died, no, he was still alive, okay? Jiang Pingji said, I agree with what you said, happiness should be enjoyed in time. But people can only enjoy the secular world when they're alive. When they die, they'll have nothing. If you abstain from hanshi powder, you can live a carefree life for another 7 or 8 years. If you don't, you won't live past 7 or 8 months. If you think about it this way, don't you feel that you're at a disadvantage? You could have lived a carefree life for a few years, but now you'll die in a few months. Feng Zhen was speechless. The beauty isn't yours, the delicacies aren't yours, the wine isn't yours, and the gambling money isn't yours. Tell me, isn't this a loss? Only by living well would one have the strength to enjoy life. If they die, they'll just be as salted fish. So, he really didn't intend to abstain from Hanshi powder. Abstain? He must live well and see how this fellow will court his own death. Who asked him to keep saying, "You're going to die," and "It's not yours"? No matter how he listened, it was unpleasant. Chapter 571. A letter from your lord. What's written inside? Yang Si couldn't help but stretch his neck to look at the letter in Wei Si's hands. He didn't know what was written inside for this person to be so happy. Could it be? He raised his eyebrows. A feeling of gossiping arose in his heart. When he fixed his eyes on the letter, he was instantly disappointed. Isn't it just that Feng Zhen is willing to stay? Why, what amazing talent does this person have to make you so happy? Wei Si kept the smile on his face and said seriously, "I am not happy because of Zishi's pledge of allegiance." Yang Si was surprised and asked, "Oh. Then why?" Wei Si said, "Zishi is usually unrestrained, almost no one can persuade him to restrain himself. But, he promised my lord to give up Hanshi powder." True love, this is. Yang Si's eyes flashed with surprise. He was no stranger to Hanshi powder. He heard that if one takes too much of it, they will never be able to live without it. If there is any mistake in the process of taking the powder, it could lead to death. Even so, there are still people who regard it as the standard, because the process of giving up Hanshi powder is too painful. Too many people can't take it and choose to continue using Hanshi powder to numb themselves. But Feng Zhen's promise to give up Hanshi powder, what does this have to do with Wei Si being happy? As if he saw the confusion on Yang Si's face, Wei Si smiled and said, "Giving up Hanshi powder isn't something that can be done in a day, he is in for it." After Yang Si heard this, he couldn't help but shiver. So he was happy only because Feng Zhen was going to suffer. Why is this fox's heart so black? Wei Si said, "Jing Rong doesn't understand, wait till you really meet Zishi, you will understand." Others worried so much for his body, but the person himself didn't care. He wasted his energy, how could he not be angry? Now that Feng Zhen is in for it, if Wei Si wasn't happy for a while, he would be letting down his worries in the past. But, he flattened the curvature of his lips and looked at the letter in his hands with a gloomy gaze, his brows carrying some doubt. Yang Si asked him, "What's wrong with you?" Wei Si replied calmly, "I just didn't expect Zishi to take the powder for 4 years. Yang Si thought it was something serious and said, "You've taken the powder for 4 years, yet you still have the energy to seek death. You don't know how to take care of yourself. You're indeed a tough guy." Wei Si shook his head secretly. That was not what he meant, but he could not explain it clearly to Yang Si. In his past life, he lived in seclusion in Zhongzhou's Bianzhou and maintained correspondence with Feng Zhen. He remembered that when Feng Zhen first came into contact with Hanshi powder, he was already over 30 years old. How old is he now? He had actually been consuming the Hanshi powder for 4.5 years and he was already addicted to it. It was really puzzling. Speaking of which, he seemed to have overlooked something. A thought flashed across Wei Si's mind and he came to his senses in an instant. Hanshi powder. This thing was indeed popular among the gentry clans, but at that time, the 9 states and 5 countries were already in a dispirited and hopeless state. Some of the nobles from the gentry clans who led a befuddled life used hanshi powder to numb themselves. The effect of the upper class was similar to that of the lower class, and hanshi powder was spread everywhere, and once it was spread out, it could not be stopped. Calculating the time, it should be 3 to 5 years later before the hanshi powder is truly spread and abused by others. In his previous life, Fengzhen had heard that hanshi powder could strengthen his physique, and that was why he consumed it. To him now was merely seeking death for the sake of enjoyment. Before that, hanshi powder was only popular among the gentry clans within a small circle. It had never been so widespread. But now, recalling the assessment a few years ago, the scholar who participated in the assessment took off his clothes and molested him in public. Wei Xi's face turned pale. Uncontrollably, Master Chen's words surfaced in his mind. Hanshi powders spread many years ago might have something to do with the evildoer who stole the fate of Dongqing. After consuming hanshi powder for 4 years, the addiction has already formed. To completely kick the habit, one would have to suffer a lot. In his previous life, Fengzhen had only consumed hanshi powder for 1 to 2 years. Afterwards, Jiang Pingji forced him to quit. According to Fengzhen's own recollection, the process of quitting was extremely painful. It caused him to develop a conditional fear towards the 3 words hanshi powder. In this life, he had consumed hanshi powder for 4 years. Wouldn't the pain of quitting be multiplied? Yang Si said sarcastically, "You can gloat, that Fengzhen is really unlucky to know you." The addiction of hanshi powder was not as strong as drugs, the probability of completely quitting was also high, but the withdrawal reaction was not something a normal person could endure. The strong desire in the mind, the pain in the body, under the double pressure, only by relying on willpower could one get through it. Runny nose and tears, muscle cramps, stomach cramps, headache and nausea. Fengzhen had tried to quit, but the feeling was too painful. He endured it for a while and gave up, choosing to bow down to the hanshi powder master. Now, how could Jiang Pingji allow him to give up? Fengzhen did not know what Jiang Pingji did to him. When the addiction of hanshi powder hit him, other than his pair of eyes that could move and his brain that could think, his entire body felt weak and powerless. He could not speak when he opened his mouth, but his consciousness remained clear and he could feel the movement in his body. The addiction flared up. From noon to dusk, his sweat had already soaked his clothes several times. Feeling the pain in his body gradually recede, Fengzhen panted heavily, as if he had crawled back from the 18th level of hell. "How do you feel?" Jiang Pingji entered from outside the house. Behind her was a guard who carried a clean set of clothes. Fengzhen laid on the ground, slowly regaining control of his body, but his limbs were still weak, even sitting up was difficult. "I don't want to talk to you." Fengzhen's face was full of sweat. He drowsily closed his eyes. He could not bear to recall the pain from before. He could not bear to recall himself being controlled by the addiction. When the addiction flared up, he thought of hundreds of ways to kill Jiang Pingji. He wished he could drink her blood, eat her flesh. He was even more crazy and cruel than a wild beast. How could he still have an ounce of rationality? "I got someone to prepare some light detoxifying food for you. Eat some after you wash up." In the next month, the addiction flares up more frequently, and the duration is longer. If you don't have enough stamina and energy, I'm afraid you won't be able to withstand it. Jiang Pingji said, "You should also be thankful that you were rather disciplined when using hanshi powder. You did not abuse it recklessly." Fengzhen had used hanshi powder for more than 4 years, but the amount every time was small, and the interval was longer. It was only in the last year that it became more frequent. The dosage also increased. If not, he would have died a long time ago. He could not be more dead. Jiang Pingji's mental brain was strong. She could secretly help him to stay awake, and it was safer for him to pass the withdrawal period. After Fengzhen heard this, he could not help but tremble. It was so painful once, and there would be more flare-ups in the next month. How could he withstand it? Can I regret it? He did not want to quit. No, you can endure it for a while, the future will be bright. Jiang Pingji looked at Feng Zhen, who was lying on the ground like a salted fish. She smiled and said, I brewed some wine recently. It's much stronger than the wine you usually drink. When you control your addiction, I'll treat you to 2 cups. Wine. Chapter 572. Beautiful, Feng Zhen took a hot bath and changed into soft, airy, and light clothes. As he had been taking the Hanshi powder all year round, his skin was very delicate. A slight abrasion would leave an obvious red mark, and it was extremely painful. That was why he could only wear old and worn-out clothes. After taking a shower, his long hair was still wet. He sat down and drank a cup of the wine Jiang Pingji brewed. As soon as the wine entered his stomach, he felt that it was incomparably hot. The warmth spread to his limbs and bones, and the tipsy feeling rushed straight to his brain. There's actually such a strong wine in this world. Beautiful. At first, he was not used to it, but after a while, the aftertaste was endless. The tipsy feeling made his whole body feel light. Awesome, it felt even better than Hanshi powder. The corners of Jiang Pingji's eyes twitched. The audience in the streaming room expressed their worries. Shuzhong Zi Yu Yen Ryu, streamer, are you sure it's enough for this guy to abstain from Hanshi powder? Why don't I quit drinking too? Jianghu, not only must he abstain from alcohol, he must also abstain from gambling and lust. The live stream should spread positive energy. A guy like Feng Zhen, who has lost his inhibitions, should be reformed. She might as well let him become a monk and forget about the 5 skandhas. Luo peanut candy, ha ha ha, although I should sympathize with him, I really can't help but feel sorry for Feng Zhen. Little angel, if he hadn't met the host, Feng Zhen would have been able to do whatever he wanted. He would have been able to court death however he wanted. But now... Sigh, he has no choice. Meeting the host might have been the biggest disaster of Feng Zhen's life. Jiang Pingji said, alcohol can harm the liver easily, so you shouldn't drink too much. Just drink half a bottle today. She poured the rest of the wine into her own bowl and drank it all in one gulp. My wine. Just as he reached out to stop her, there were only a few drops of wine left in her bowl. It happened so quickly that Feng Zhen couldn't react in time. Jiang Pingji sneered. That's mine. Feng Zhen gritted his teeth and said, how can you be so despicable? He hadn't had enough. Jiang Pingji said, do you want more? Just endure the next craving. Feng Zhen, I have a saying, you are very arrogant, does your father know? I don't know if I should say it or not. Lu Shi, come back here. Just as Jiang Pingji had said, it was very painful in the early stages of giving up the powder. It would act up frequently, but once it was over, it would be a whole new world. In the beginning, it would only flare up once every 1 or 2 days, and each flare-up for more than half a day. Gradually, it became a flare-up every 3 to 5 days, and it would flare up for an hour. 2 months later, Feng Zhen's vitality slowly improved. His cheeks had a healthy flush, and the green color on his lips had faded. Even his thin cheeks had gained some weight. He had yet to completely abstain from Hanshi powder, but when his addiction flared up, he no longer needed Jiang Pingji's special care. Just based on his willpower, he could withstand the withdrawal symptoms and resist the urge to consume Hanshi powder. This was considered a huge improvement. Of course, based on the ridicule from the audience in the streaming room, perhaps the appeal of fine wine to Feng Zhen was far greater than the Hanshi powder. The benefits of quitting the powder were obvious. This was something Feng Zhen was most familiar with. Previously, his brain was like glass that was covered with dirt that was difficult to remove. Now that the dirt was gone, sunlight could pass through the glass without any obstruction. His thoughts were unprecedentedly clear, and his thinking speed was much faster than before. Even his memory had recovered a lot. One had to know that after consuming hanshi powder, his brain was somewhat sluggish and his memory was weak. He would often forget some unimportant things after hearing them. Jiang Pingji saw that he had recovered well. She directly brought him to the government office and assigned Dian Yan to be his temporary guard. Even if he ran to the toilet, Dian Yan had to wait outside the toilet and was not allowed to leave easily. This made Feng Zhen furious. Jiang Pingji said, "Isn't it because I'm afraid that your addiction will suddenly act up? With Dian Yan watching over you, I'm more at ease." Feng Zhen said, "Who would believe your words?" Was it because she was concerned about him? The hanshi powder he had on him had been wiped clean. Even if he wanted to use it, he couldn't. Occasionally, his addiction to alcohol would kick in and he would want to drink a little or sneak out to play with girls, drinking and having fun. Not long after, Dian Yan would appear with a pair of glaring eyes. He looked at him without saying a word, not saying a word, just looking at him. Even if Feng Zhen was thick-skinned, he was too embarrassed to continue hugging girls. Was this concern? After a while, he was almost scared to the point of impotence. Jiang Pingji said seriously, "The autumn harvest has just ended. Fingyi County has to be busy with the matters of getting through the winter. Whether it's the people's livelihood or the army's training, they come one after another. At such a time, you're enjoying yourself alone. What will others think? After you're done with this, you can play as much as you want. I'll reimburse all your expenses. How about it? That good?" Feng Zhen was suspicious, but Jiang Pingji was too sincere. He couldn't help but choose to believe her. Feng Jin clicked his tongue. His lord's painting skills were even more exquisite. Feng Zhen still didn't know the fear of working overtime. However, he had secretly seen how Feng Zhen's addiction acted up. Now that he hadn't completely kicked the addiction, would there be any slip-ups if he was allowed to handle official matters? Jiang Pingji said, "It's all right. Don't be fooled by his sickly appearance. He has too much energy. Once he's idle, no one knows what he's thinking about. It's dangerous for his addiction to act up. Let him work hard in the government office and waste his energy. I guarantee that he won't even have the energy to think about what hanshi powder is." To put it bluntly, when the addiction flared up in the past, it was because he had nothing better to do. When he's busy, the situation will improve. She was speaking nonsense with a straight face, but Feng Jin didn't dare to agree. Why didn't he know that a heavy workload could help him kick the addiction? It was obviously his lord who was making things up. At the end of November, Guoxian's trusted aide brought a group of merchants to the Xiangyang district. The items he brought this time were much more than the previous totals. "Your servant greets the owner." It was the confidant's first time meeting Jiang Pingji, but the respect on his face was not fake. "How's the plan this time?" Jiang Pingji discussed in detail with this confidant in the study. The guards and maids around were all cleared away. She even temporarily shut down the streaming room. Guoxian's confidant was the manager of the treasure house. He said, "Everything went smoothly. All the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace has been sold to the North Borderlines Business Alliance at 30% of the price. The money and jewels exchanged are all recorded here. Owner, please take a look." Jiang Pingji reached out and received the thick and heavy account book. The records were indeed very detailed. There was not a single discrepancy in the amount. "You've worked hard this time. I plan to allocate 200,000 strings of coins to reward the merchant group that transported the goods." Although it was only 30%, the profit was undoubtedly terrifying. 20 sets of glass jewelry were sold at the normal price. The total was 1.83 million strings of coins. The remaining 2,000 sets were sold to the North Borderlines Business Alliance at 30% of the price. The total was 36 million strings of coins. The total was 19 million strings of coins. These were all exchanged for gold, silver, and jewels of equivalent value. There was not much fluctuation. The manager of the treasure house also used more than 100,000 strings of coins to purchase a large amount of sheepskin and wool. It almost emptied out the stock accumulated by the farmers in the North Borderline. The manager smiled. This is what a servant should do. Chapter 573. The manager of the treasure house was indeed worthy of praise. Not only could he complete the task perfectly, but he could also keep his heart in the face of millions of dollars without greed. If Jiang Pingji did not reward him well and let him get the reward he deserved, who would work for her in the future? Even if she knew that the manager of the treasure house could achieve this, Gu Axian must have done something secretly, but the reward was clear and she could not be stingy. Therefore, in addition to the 200,000 strings of coins awarded to the caravan, she also took out an additional 20,000 strings of coins from the private treasury to give to the manager. Su Ke had been helping Jiang Pingji to manage the private treasury. He recorded every expenditure and income in detail. Seeing the two payments, even though he was used to seeing his lord's generosity, he could not help but be speechless. A total of 220,000 strings of coins, not 22 strings of coins. Did he know what 220,000 strings of coins meant? He only needed to take out 10,000 strings of coins and he could buy a position as a district magistrate in Dongqing. If he donated 100,000 strings of coins, he could become a county magistrate in name only. If this wasn't a big deal, then what was? Su Ke looked at the two payments and sighed. When he saw the other payment, he was so shocked that he even threw away his brush. The annual income of the National Treasury was only 90 to 150 million strings of coins. His lord was just a district magistrate who occupied the entire territory of Fengyi County without a proper reason. Her income in a few months was close to 20 million strings of coins. Su Ke suppressed the urge to scream for a long time. Because of this, he was in a trance and almost floated to the government office of Xiangyang District. Feng Jin looked up and saw Su Ke, whom he had not seen for a few months. He was much thinner than he remembered. He said with concern, looking at Xiaoyu, "The matters in Maolin District must be very heavy. If you are too tired, why don't you discuss with the Lord and rest at home for 2 days?" Su Ke was stunned and regained his senses. "I'm fine." The government affairs in Maolin District were indeed very busy. In the beginning, they were so busy that Su Ke almost forgot how it felt to sleep. Fortunately, he successfully got through that period and everything was on the right track. The following matters were handled by his subordinates according to the regulations. Su Ke only needed to handle some trivial matters and strengthen supervision and inspection. Feng Jin was surprised and looked at Su Ke from head to toe. Su Ke was still wearing the old clothes that his aunt and Xuanmei made for him a few years ago. The old clothes that originally fit him looked empty now. "You should eat more. Look, you've lost so much weight." Feng Jin had a lot of work in the past 6 months. Logically speaking, his workload should be reduced by 20%. However, the food in the government office was too good. In addition, he had a virtuous and meticulous wife to take care of him. His face was ruddy and he looked like a flower that had been carefully watered. Su Ke nodded, still looking absent-minded. Before they could say more, unfamiliar footsteps came from outside the government office, accompanied by a tuneless tune. Su Ke frowned. Feng Jin said, "It should be Zisher." Zisher. Su Ke was extremely busy in Maolin District. Occasionally, he had the time to pay attention to the matters in Xiangyang district. Feng Zhen was one of them. It was said that this person was addicted to hanqi powder and his behavior was unrestrained. Just based on this, Su Ke's first impression of Feng Zhen was that he was below the passing grade. Su Ke said, "Feng Zisher." Feng Jin nodded. As soon as he finished speaking, a figure in a green scholarly robe almost floated in. There was a slight smell of alcohol around him. His eyes were slightly narrowed, and he was humming an unknown tune. He mechanically said good afternoon to Feng Jin, then turned around to deal with his own affairs. Su Ke was a living person, yet he was neglected by Feng Zhen. He drank. Su Ke was surprised. The Lord actually indulged Feng Zhen so much that she allowed him to drink while working in the government office. Feng Jin let out a long sigh and said, "The Lord asked Yan Yan to keep an eye on him and not allow him to use hanqi powder or drink excessively. I don't know where this person hides the alcohol. He must be drunk during his lunch break every day. However, he does his work very well and has never made a mistake." For Jiang Pingji, as long as her subordinates did not step on her bottom line, she was happy to indulge them and allow them to have their own private hobbies. Feng Zhen could drink half a pot of alcohol every day under Dian Yan's pursuit and interception. It was impossible without Jiang Pingji's tacit approval. Feng Jin and Su Ke were both very disciplined in their personal lives. They were models of self-discipline when it came to Feng Zhen. Feng Jin and Su Ke definitely didn't approve of his behavior. However, since Jiang Pingji didn't pursue the matter, it wasn't appropriate for them to restrain Feng Zhen. The two of them did not purposely lower their voices, so Feng Zhen listened openly. He sneered and mocked the two of them. Dian Yan's pursuit and interception were powerful, but there were policies and countermeasures. Hiding a few pots of alcohol to secretly drink was a small matter. Not to mention, his drinking buddy was their lord, Jiang Pingji. It would be strange if Dian Yan found out. He thought proudly. When he lowered his head, he noticed that there were 2 more rolls of information on the table. The seal had not been opened yet. A letter for him. Feng Zhen opened it and he sobered up from his drunkenness. Ayaya, oh no. Feng Jin heard the commotion and asked, "What happened?" Feng Zhen pinched his chin and said, "I never knew that I was so popular. Everyone was fighting over me." Feng Jin and Su Ke looked at each other in surprise. Someone had written a letter to Feng Zhen with the intention of recruiting him. The signature is interesting. Shangyang Feng Huijie. Why is this name so similar to Huayu's? Looking at the date of the signature, it was actually half a month earlier than Wei Ci. It was just that the geographical distance was different. He had received Wei Ci's letter first. Feng Huijie. Wasn't that Feng Jin's younger brother, Feng Ju? Su Ke turned his head. As expected, Feng Jin's expression had darkened. It was as if a thick layer of black paint had been applied to his face. "That's my younger brother," Feng Jin answered. Feng Zhen looked at the letter in surprise and then looked at Feng Jin. Feng Ju and Feng Jin were actually biological brothers. Were they really from the same mother? Their temperaments did not seem like it. Compared to the somewhat unrestrained and rebellious Feng Ju, Feng Jin was a proper son of an aristocratic family. His every move seemed to be measured by a ruler. He was neither distant nor close. He did things by the book. It was no wonder that Feng Zhen did not associate the two of them together. After a while, he smiled and said, "The person that Huijie is assisting is quite ambitious. Our Lord will not submit to anyone. If the two of them were to fight, there would definitely be a battle. In the future. I'm afraid that the situation of you brothers fighting each other will be unavoidable." Feng Jin's expression darkened even more. He hated Huang Song. He really did not know what kind of magic potion that Huang Song had fed Feng Ju. How could a mere eunuch's son be worthy of Feng Ju's full support? We all serve our own masters. If such a day really comes, Jean will naturally clean up the mess. Feng Jin snorted softly. His impression of Feng Zhen had also worsened. Feng Zhen did not care. His personality was not suitable for dealing with such righteous gentlemen. Opening the other letter, Feng Zhen clicked his tongue. It looks like that Huang Song really does have some skills. Feng Jin raised his eyebrows. What's wrong? Chapter 574. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Jiang Pingji occupied the entire territory of Fengyi County. She had 20,000 meticulously trained troops in her hands. Next spring, she would be able to sweep through Wanzhou and take over the entire province. When the time came, she could directly write a memorial and force the Dongqing royal family to confer her the title of governor of Wanzhou. If they sent a large number of troops across half of the north to attack Huang Song in order to nip their enemy in the bud, they would not be able to conquer Wanzhou next year. But they would not be happy to allow Huang Song to grow at the border between the south and the north. Feng Jin said, "It's better to discuss this with the Lord. Should they allow a strong enemy to grow, or should they focus on their own development and strength first?" For Jiang Pingji, she could make the right choice with her eyes closed. "Why are you in such a hurry?" she said with a smile. "I've heard of Qing Jing. He's one of Master Yuanjing's 4 disciples. He has a great background, but don't forget that our Zixiao is also Master Yuanjing's disciple. So what if Huang Song has Qing Jing's assistance? Can he do whatever he wants? I've also studied at Langyi Academy for a few years, so I have a certain understanding of Qing Jing. He's nothing to be afraid of." Hearing words like, "whatever he wants," Feng Jin and Su Ku looked serious. They did not understand, but Feng Zhen, who was very dirty, understood instantly. If Qing Jing is incompetent, how could he be valued by Master Yuanjing? Feng Zhen heard Jiang Pingji say that Qing Jing was nothing to be afraid of, and he could not help but frown. Feng Zhen had always admired this good friend he had met through Wei Ci. He had also given Qing Jing a high degree of recognition. Jiang Pingji's contemptuous attitude made him a little unhappy. "I'm not saying that Qing Jing is incompetent. I'm just saying that he and Huang Song are partners. I'm afraid they'll drag each other down." Jiang Pingji said, "I know Huang Song. I've also heard a little about Qing Jing from the many students at Langyi Academy. They can go through thick and thin together, but they might not be able to enjoy happiness together. Qing Jing is much more hairy than Huayu. Not only does he measure himself by the standards of a gentleman, but he also likes to measure others by the same standards. As for Huang Song, he's a man who doesn't make any major mistakes, but he's full of small ones. TSK. These two people's personalities aren't compatible, unless one of them makes a concession and changes." Jiang Pingji paused at this point and continued, "To put it simply, Qing Jing's character requires a tolerant lord who doesn't mind his little criticisms. Huang Song, on the other hand, needs a subordinate who ignores his small problems. Otherwise, it will be a disaster. Of course, everything has a honeymoon period." At this time, Huang Song and Qing Jing were still in a state of intense love. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and they were satisfied wherever they looked. Huang Song's influence was small at the moment, so he would naturally exercise caution and restrain himself. Qing Jing would also wholeheartedly assist him and do his best to assist him. However, when Huang Song's strength increased and he had more people by his side, Qing Jing's advice might be an eyesore. After saying that, she concluded, "We just need to take care of our own matters." Standing firm is far more important than anything else. Feng said, if Huang Song is allowed to grow, he will definitely become the Lord's #1 enemy. Jiang Pingji sneered. My rival. Even if he cultivated for another 8 to 10 years, he still wouldn't be qualified. Even if he could stand up to me as an equal, he still wouldn't be able to defeat me. If we focus on such a strong enemy and neglect more important things, then we'll have our priorities reversed. According to Jiang Pingji's original plan, her battlefield would be the northern borderline and the north of Dongqing. She had no time to care about the southern region for the time being. Without Huang Song, there will still be LV Song or He Song. Only by being strong can we be fearless. Therefore, Jiang Pingji still insisted on her own opinion. Next spring, they would conquer Wanzhou. As long as they occupied Wanzhou, along with the nearby Chongzhou and Hu County that was secretly controlled by Liu Shi, the three places would be connected. When the time came, they would have money, food, manpower, and soldiers. Then, they could restrain the cavalry. It was not impossible to defeat the northern borderline. What were the benefits of defeating the northern borderline? Not only were there rich mineral resources, countless gold, silver, and jewelry, but there were also vast territories and commercial areas. There were also countless horse farms and elite warhorses. The horse farms in Dongqing were concentrated in Cangzhou. If they could not conquer Cangzhou or obtain the support of the Meng family in Cangzhou, the cavalry would not be of any use. If they could encroach on the northern borderline, with the horse farms and elite warhorses, would they have to worry about not being able to form a cavalry? With the cavalry, it would be a piece of cake to turn around and attack the forces in Dongqing. Feng Zhen looked at Jiang Pingji seriously. He sighed in his heart. This child had a firm heart and was not moved by external factors. She had the appearance of a wise ruler. This winter, I'll have to trouble you again. After spring, we will prepare for war in Wanzhou. Does anyone have any objections? Feng Jin and Su Ke's expressions changed drastically. They seemed to recall the fear of working overtime last winter. Only Feng Zhen, who did not understand the situation, replied with a smile, how would I dare to refuse the Lord's request? But, my lord, don't forget our previous agreement. They had to hold on to the support of eating, drinking, and having fun. This was their meal ticket in the future. Jiang Pingji returned a light smile. Of course. How could I forget what I promised Zisher? Su Ke gave Feng Jin a look and inquired about the situation. What shady dealings did the Lord and Feng Jin have with each other? Feng Jin secretly sighed and mumbled to himself. Su Ke almost choked from laughing. How can you take my lord's words seriously? Su Ke laughed and ridiculed him. My lord often says these things, but she doesn't know that the government office is always busy. They are only busy for a short period of time throughout the year, and that short period of time is a year. How can there be time for him to eat, drink, and have fun? Feng Jin said, isn't that so? Throughout the year, there are only 7 days of rest before and after the new year. However, during these 7 days, the eateries, gambling dens, brothels, and southern courtyards are all closed, preparing to celebrate the new year with their families. The shops are all closed. I don't know where he is going to enjoy himself. Sigh, another one who has been fooled by the Lord. I don't know when he will find out the truth. I'm afraid it won't be too late. The two looked at each other and smiled. They saw the gloating look in each other's eyes. In Qingan district, Wei Xi also received the news that Qingjing had pledged allegiance to Huang Song. He could only lament about fate. Yang Xi was a man with sharp eyes. His evaluation of Huang Song and Qingjing was not much different from what Jiang Pingji had said. Wei Xi responded with silence. Yang Xi said, You and Qingjing are brothers from the same sect. If you fight in the future, I'm afraid it will be difficult. Wei Xiai said indifferently, in terms of difficulty, can it be more difficult than the brothers Huayu and Fingjue? It was not just Feng Jin and Fingjue. The two brothers' eldest brother assisted another person. It was obvious that the three brothers were hurting each other's hearts. Then why do you look sad? Wei Xiai did not answer. How could he answer? Could he tell Yang Si that he was silent only because Qingjing had also served Huang Song in his previous life? Qingjing was imprisoned when Huang Song's power was at its peak. Because the ruler and his ministers had different opinions, the conflict became more and more acute. The conflict of many years erupted and could not be resolved. In the end, Qingjing was imprisoned for more than 2 years. When Huang Song was defeated and committed suicide, Qingjing heard the news and finally committed suicide in prison. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.